Chapter 632, Mount Kilkreath. I haven't made it clear before, but Jarl Elisif's death was actually cut content from Skyrim. The Daedric quest of Bothia was originally made so that the player assassinates Jarl Elisif, but it was changed for some reason. If you kill Elisif with console commands, there is a unique line that the Stormcloak soldiers will say that even the nobility of Oblivion are on their side. Personally, I see that Elisif was a bad leader altogether despite the sentiment towards her. Many of you suggested that Jon would crawl in her bed and add her to the harem, but that would be an insult to his friend, King Torrig. Killing her in that way will guarantee her to go to Sovngarde, since all Nords who get killed go there. I know it is supposed to be a battle, but the game counts them as honored dead if you have the Afterlife mod. If you take a look at real-world politics, you'd know that Elisif was surely lucky to survive this long. By the skin of our teeth, we made it, Viezra said as he dragged his tired body off his horse. Scales in your case, Serana replied nonchalantly. Very funny, vampire girl, he replied with a fake laugh. You're welcome, reptile, she said as an insult. The Argonian and the vampire made it back to the hideout of the Dark Brotherhood 3 days later after the operation of killing Vittoria Vici. They had to run in circles and diverge their path many times in order to shake off their chasers and return home. You've been avoiding my questions those past 3 days? Serana spoke. You think it is the right time to ask questions? Viezra asked. We're home at last. Serana stated the obvious. At least let my mortal body rest first, you undying freak. Viezra insulted the apathetic vampire and took his gear off his horse. Eventually, all mortals shall rest. Bah! Tell me about that woman. Serana seemed to have been asking questions endlessly about the woman that interrupted their escape in Castle Dour, the Dunmare with such a strong killing intent, Jullinar. Viezra sighed and walked off. Imagine raising a child as an assassin, perfect in every way, then some fool with brainwashing ideologies and an endless amount of money comes and reaps the benefit. That tells you enough, vampire? He said without looking back. So she was your prospect? You trained and raised her? Serana asked. She has the willingness to kill. All I had to do was to push it further. Her mother was dying, then just hasten that process, make the girl full of anger, and you have the perfect murderous child recipe. Cruelty breeds cruelty. Viezra bragged about his method. Then? Serana asked more. Then put a knife in her hand and tell her to kill. How hard was that? If not for her falling into his hands, she would have turned just perfect. But he brainwashed her to no return. How can a woman that strong be brainwashed? How can she not? She changed her name for him, kills in his name, wakes and sleeps in his name, she even worships him like some sort of a lunatic. Viezra shouted. I see. Quite unfortunate for you losing a prospect like that, Serana said, and became no longer interested in what Viezra had to say. She never had the pleasure to meet any of Jon's entourage other than Jullinar, and she left quite the impression. If Jon, who is already this powerful, has a powerful lackey such as Jullinar, it would mean that not only Serana was weak, but totally outnumbered and outgunned against Jon's level. She held him at the level she needs to at least reach in order to face her father, who is the strongest existence she knows of. Either way, this is the first of the remaining targets, Serana said and walked ahead of Viezra. Astrid gave you more targets? Viezra asked. 2 more. Serana replied and reached the black door to enter the sanctuary report to Astrid. As the two went in and descended the stairway, they were met with Astrid and Nazir. You two are back. Astrid jumped off her chair as she was anxiously waiting. What's wrong? Both Serana and Viezra asked reflexively. Wrong? Apart from everything, what's right? Nazir scolded them. As you two were taking your time arriving here, the world was turning upside down. Serana had a bad feeling and didn't reply to know more about the situation. Your orders were to kill Vittoria Vici, Astrid said, Now I know you all are good assassins and everything, but why did you have to go out of your way and murder the Jarl of Solitude? Murder who? Serana asked as she didn't believe what she heard. We didn't. Even Viezra refuted immediately. Don't play dumb on me? Astrid shouted. Astrid. Viezra had to raise his voice. We really didn't. The look on Astrid's face was that of pure anger, but she had to calm down and turn the other way. On the other hand, Nazir carried a piece of paper to both Serana and Viezra. They have posters of your faces spread all around the Imperial holds? He threw a stack of paper at them which spread around them as they fell down. Interesting. Viezra frowned as he caught a paper in front of his face. Meanwhile, Serana felt that she went through a terrible shock and would have gone paler if she wasn't a vampire. The fact that her face was put on a wanted poster only meant that the other vampires of the Fokihar clan are going to pick up on her trail very soon. However, what is that? Viezra spoke in agitation. What's wrong? Nazir asked. They got my face completely right, but her face. Viezra raised the paper and Serana managed to see her face on the poster for the first time. She wanted to say something, but her emotions, which were running wild just now, exhausted her brain. You're right. I noticed it too, but they didn't get her right at all. Nazir agreed with Viezra. You were there with us. Why didn't your face get reported? Viezra asked. Unlike you, my dear Argonian friend, my charming face leaves no witnesses alive. Nazir joked around, but no one laughed at his joke, so he awkwardly toned it down. On the other hand, Serana managed to calm down at last. Her face was seen only by Julliner, who is one of John's people. The fact that Viezra's face was accurately reported, while hers was completely wrong, meant something very obvious. John Dare is sending her a message that he still has her back. It is annoying to be supervised by him, but getting her face revealed this soon is just problematic. For that, she calmed down and participated in the conversation. Unlike you, Nazir, we survived our witness only by the care of Sithiz, she said. Still, we were too busy running away rather than chasing the Jarl of Solitude of all people. So you're saying that we're being framed? Astrid asked. With all due respect, we're in bed with a member of the Imperial Council in this contact. It means that they will have their own turns to play while we play, and they can just hide their cards in ours. Serana spoke out her insight. Indeed? Nazir agreed and Viezra nodded. I guess you are right. Astrid found no other way other than to agree with Serana at this point. We should change our approach to the remaining 2 targets before the big job. Who's the next target? Viezra asked. You'll have to remove yourself from the next few jobs since your face is known, Astrid said. Nords can't tell us Argonians apart, you know. Viezra protested. Exactly. A lot of your folk will be hunted, so I am not risking you. Astrid said. Nazir, I'll need you to manage things around here while I am away to bring some funds. As for Serana, your face is completely mistaken on the posters, so we will use this in our good luck. All right. Serana nodded. With Vichi's murder, you've started us down a path the Dark Brotherhood hasn't traveled in centuries. The assassination of an emperor. And now your reward. A unique spell to summon a legend of the Dark Brotherhood. His soul serves us now in death, as his body once did in life. And of course, a bonus for killing Vici while she addressed her guests as instructed. Gold, simple and pure. Spend it as you will and not all in one place. Now then, time to proceed to the next stage of the plan. Go and speak with Gabriella. She's been helping me arrange your next contract, Astrid said. Any details I need to hear before going? Serana asked. The Emperor's arrival in Skyrim is now a certainty since he can ignore his cousin's wedding but not her funeral. The Imperial Legion will need to begin its preparations immediately. Security is being handled by a man named Gaius Morrow. His job is to travel throughout Skyrim and ensure each city is prepared for the Emperor's visit. You must find and kill him. Doing so will disrupt security sufficiently that we will be able to, eventually, get to the Emperor. Isn't it dangerous to target such a man who oversees the visit? The Emperor won't come if his planner is slaughtered, right? Serana asked. That's why I took the liberty of visiting the cities and spreading some nasty rumors about the head of the Emperor's security, Commander Morrow, to make his treachery that much more believable. Astrid explained. Serana thought for a few seconds and nodded. I see. She said, I'll speak to Gabriella. Serana headed in to speak with Gabriella, and the two started discussing the plan. The head of the Emperor's security, Commander Morrow, had to be crippled somehow, thus killing his son, Gaius Morrow, and planting incriminating evidence on his body is the best way to ensure the man's destruction. The best evidence is by attributing the plot of killing the Emperor to Gaius Morrow. Aside from disturbing the Emperor's security detail, this will give the Emperor a false sense of security since the supposed assassination has already failed. Serana took this information back to her room in the sanctuary and started to plan her actions. In order to know where her target is, she must steal the traveling schedule of Gaius Morrow, which is located in Dragonbridge. Still, something was very disturbing happening in her room. On her small wooden table, there was a journal with a cover made of sheepskin. Attached to it was a note, and on it was a very disturbing line. I took the liberty of visiting the Penitus Oculatus outpost and took out Gaius Morrow's schedule with me as a gift to you, cute little fangs. Just thinking that this man can breach the entire security of the Dark Brotherhood and deliver her a letter in the deepest part of the sanctuary, the thought was just provoking. P.S. Don't mind the black cat fur. Actually, you may consider it a blessing. Black fur. Serana looked around, and on her bed, there was a black cat peacefully taking a nap. The security of the Dark Brotherhood, that's certainly considered a joke to some people. Away from all the drama in the universe, Sir John Dare and Lady Bryling traveled through Hafingar's mountains along with 20 guards. It is mighty exciting to be a travel planner for the first time, my lady, John spoke. A man with your fame must have traveled a lot, my lord. The 2 years in exile must have been filled with adventures. Bryling replied. So you have heard of my endeavors? He asked. All of Skyrim found out when you became the grand champion of the Imperial Arena, defeating the previous champion Darius in an epic battle. Bryling replied. Yes, those were the days I spent on the road. My friend Vittoria Vici received me that day in the Imperial City in a grandiose gala. John said, Heavens bless her soul. She will be missed. Bryling said. She will. How hard it is, finding kindred souls in this world. John said in a saddened tone, All right, we're almost there. That is, Mount Kilkreath. Bryling noted. Yes, the mountain where the old shrine of Meridia lies, John said. You know your Daedra, my lord, Bryling said. Well, for a guy who came from Winterhold, I walk outside my balcony every morning and see the fascinating shrine of Azura towering over my land. I might have grown a bit used to the Daedra. John laughed. Dangerous words. Bryling smiled as she said so. Either way, there is a shrine of Meridia up there, my lady. The main shrine of the Daedra in Skyrim. We go up there and, John started explaining his plan. My lord. Bryling interrupted him. I know your plan was to pile up achievements, but I thought this has to do with the situation of Dragonbridge Village. True. That's why we have to come here first before seeing the situation of Dragonbridge. John nodded. In this shrine, there is something we need to pick up first. I am just not sure dealing with the Daedra is the best achievement we can accomplish at this moment. Bryling expressed her worries as a normal person who would go to far lengths in order to avoid the princes of Oblivion. Don't worry. Meridia and I go way back. John eased her worries casually but then looked back at her. Just mind your eardrums. The group reached the entrance of the shrine and John led them on top of it in order to find the statue of Meridia, Daedric Prince of Infinite Energies. The statue was that of a woman dressed in large robes that moved around her to form what can be seen as two wings. She raised her arms above her head and an aura of white energy gathered atop of it. "What are we doing here?" asked Bryling. John started searching his storage cube and retrieved an item that he kept hovering above his hand. "Hold this, please," he said. "That is a gemstone. Very pure, as you see." Bryling hesitated a bit before taking the gem from John. It was a white gem of a strange rough shape, yet it had a very pure luster to it. Bryling wasn't particularly impressed by it, but she felt that such a big gem is by no means ordinary. At that moment, her expressions turned strange and started sweating amid this snowy day, as if it was midsummer. After a short while, the look on her face became natural. "Good." John nodded and took the beacon of Meridia towards the pedestal in front of the statue, then placed it there. "And up we go!" At that moment, both John and Thane Bryling felt that the level of their vision had reached the sky, and a powerful voice spoke to them. After a long time of acquiring the beacon of Meridia, John has finally decided to challenge the Daedric quest of Meridia to acquire a very powerful weapon. Chapter 633 Break of Dawn. Sitting around a campfire at the side of the road, John and Bryling sat together and started studying a map of the old shrine of Meridia. "I say we should take this way." "What?" "This way. We should take it." "Speak up." "We go this way." "All right." "Goodness. I think I made her deaf." It was John and Bryling who had to meet the Daedra Meridia upon the arrival to Mount Kilkreath, and John played a prank on Bryling to let her hear the deafening voice of Meridia. So much for a prank it was. Bryling and even John himself were badly deafened after the encounter with the Daedric prince. Meridia elevated the senses of both John and Bryling above the clouds and spoke to them through an aura of light. She then gave them the command to cleanse her shrine of the undead infestation and the necromancer responsible. Bryling signed up immediately after knowing that there is a necromancer this close to the city, and stated that she respects Meridia for her hate towards undeath and necromancy, but her true heart is with Akatosh, something that Meridia didn't bother with. John also promised Meridia aid and alliance, as they have many mutual enemies. This agreement with the Daedra led to the small side campaign in the shrine in order to cleanse it from the undead. "So, you said you have the same enemies as a Daedric lord?" Bryling asked. "Yes," John replied. Bryling furrowed her brows as she didn't hear him well. John let out a sigh and pointed his staff near her head before channeling a fast healing spell. "I hope you can hear better now," he said. Barely. The world is still ringing," Bryling said. "As you say, I share a few enemies with Prince Meridia. Aside from necromancers and vampires, I have a big grudge with Molag Bal. I remember fucking Clavicus Vile once. I had a falling out with Maroon's Dagon. Hermias Mora supports a rival of mine, and I can't stand either Malakath or Periite." "Goodness." Bryling frowned. "You have an entire pantheon of enemies." "True." John nodded. "There is also the worm god, but nobody likes Mannimarco either way." "Who are your allies then?" Bryling asked. "I have the support of Azura, Bothia, and Mephala, even though one wouldn't rely on those deceitful three for anything good. Still, a good portion of their worshippers live under my protection, and I allow them to worship freely and openly within the limits of law. Sheogorath is a long-time ally, and somehow, he feels like an uncle to me. Herson is also treating me well, and hopefully, Meridia joins the party. That's 6 enemies and 6 friendlies. Indeed. The remaining 4 are the ones neutral to me so far. Namra and Vermina are too much even for me, so I tend to avoid them, even though my wife has managed to be on good terms with Vermina. Nocturnal is also one I need to forge an alliance with, and lastly Sanguine invited me to a realm party once." "A realm party?" "The biggest philanderer in Oblivion and the biggest philanderer on Nirn. It surely was a party." Bryling looked away from John and stared back into the campfire. So, what are we supposed to gain from this? Bryling asked. Aside from knowing that a neighboring necromancer is dealt with, there is also a good artifact lying around somewhere, John said. What's it about? She asked. Smiting the undead back to oblivion, he replied. The fact that you want this means that the main thing we are after is also undead, Bryling concluded. You're a sharp woman, Lady Bryling. You'll make a good Jarl. John confirmed her thoughts and retreated to his small tent. But the guards we brought are too few for such a thing. Our entire party will be in danger if anything. She started worrying, but John interrupted her. The 20 guards we brought along aren't here to fight, he said. Then, are you okay with them being put to danger down here? Bryling asked with a stern face. Relax. John smiled. All we need are 20 witnesses. Witnesses? Sure. Someone who witnesses how awesome the future Jarl is. You'll be doing all the fighting in case you didn't notice. I'll be protecting them from the sidelines while you spearhead. And you're just telling me that? Bryling seemed disturbed. If I am to serve my hold, I don't need witnesses or words of thanks and glory. Goodness, John sighed, it's just some propaganda. Just leave it to me and focus on solving problems. Getting in terms with someone as lawful as Bryling is a pain in the ass, but John can't go back now, especially after killing Jarl Elisif. If he doesn't appoint a strong ally in Solitude, he would lose a lot of connections, especially after the supposed death of Vittoria Vici. The plan had to succeed. Getting into the temple was one thing, getting through it was another. Meridia's temple was built hundreds of years ago, and the undead attacked it many times before, thus it is an easy stronghold to defend. What John did was to imbue Thane Bryling with a lot of magical energy that her mace was shimmering with sun energy, an effect deadly for the undead. The guards following her were ordered into 2 formations and took the flanks. John took the rear and sent many Atranacs and familiars to assist Bryling in the front. Against such force, the temple was breached easily, but the sight of the undead creeped out the simple city guards who couldn't handle their appearance. Walking skeletons is one thing, but the things that guarded the Temple of Meridia were corrupted shades, incarnations of dead war soldiers that wandered by mistake into this temple and got caught by the necromancer. Some of them were Imperial legionaries, some were hold guards, some were stormcloaks. What was more horrific was the fact that many corpses of those soldiers were lying around almost everywhere. The corrupted shades themselves were not walking dead but more like ghosts, beings enshrouded in shadow energy that felt dark and empty as they floated around and wailed, as if they were expecting the moment of their death over and over. Don't fear the dead, brave men. Those are war martyrs, people who fought on both sides and departed valiantly. However, the necromancer sent his minions and broke their souls from their corpses in order to make them into his minions as well. The Nords among them didn't get to go to Sovngarde, but rather to the dreadful pits of oblivion. By putting down the shades, you free your brethren and send them safe to Sovngarde. Rejoice, brothers, for today you are the messengers of Kine and the warriors of Shore. John had to boost morale and speak powerful words in order to indoctrinate the narrative he wants to be spread into the minds of those guard. If 20 guards return to Solitude and spread the rumors, things will go very well in Bryling's favor. But he went lengths beyond that. He personally made the guards witness how the light of Meridia comes and travels through her temple and how it must be channeled in order to protect Hafingar from the undead hordes. By doing that, he displayed his arcane craft and his work for the betterment of the people through any means possible. That said and done, the party delved to the deepest of the temple's inner sanctum and confronted the necromancer, who fortified the last chamber with a large number of undead. There, John had to take the lead. Necromancer Malkaran, we know you are holden there. You have committed crimes against Skyrim and her people. What say you in your defense? John shouted outside the room. The hold guards following him looked at each other with signs of amazement at how clean that line came out. "You dirty bastards! You can't leave a man to his work when he is bothering nobody." From inside, the Breton necromancer Malcaron spoke. "Humph! You worm cult bastard! You think I don't know what you are?" John said, "You're one of those worm cult executives who worship that worm demon Manimarco. Damn you! Don't you insult my lord." The necromancer seemed frustrated when John said what he said. "Heh! You worm bastards were almost wiped out in Hammerfell by the citadel of Ebenarm at Hagoth. I was there and I witnessed the massacre," John said as he enjoyed taunting the necromancer out. "Bastard! I'll kill you personally." The necromancer was enraged but still held his anger to not make a mistake against those who cleared out his stronghold in a few hours. "I remember the masked man, though. Do you remember him? He's the one who broke through Hagoth and destroyed the incarnation of Manimarco. What was his name? Krylin?" That was the moment when the necromancer took it no more. "You have a death wish. Fine, fine. I'll show you. Consider this the punishment that you dared to. Bzzzzzt." As the necromancer seemed to be letting his minions out of the chamber, John immediately sent a spell rushing through the enemies ahead of him and turned anything in its wake into ash. "What was that?" Bryling asked as she just witnessed a spell that employed a terrifying rush of lightning which caused her heart to jump off its place and her eyes to be blinded for a few seconds. "Couldn't hold it," John said and moved ahead. "Let's go." John went down into the inner sanctum where the necromancer was taking shelter, and the moment he walked in, he raised his staff once again and bzzzzzt. He shot another oversized lightning bolt at the shade of the necromancer, which was his second phase boss mode. With the necromancer dead, the place was now returned to Meridia's control, and both John and Bryling had to remove a blade from a pedestal that was blocking the light of Meridia to travel to its goal in the temple. That blade was the ever-famous and most wanted artifact an adventurer would hope to possess. This was the blade that destroys the undead and cleanses the evil, the heroic sword Dawnbreaker. Chapter 634 The Man Who Cried Wolf, Leftero. Dawnbreaker. The Dawnbreaker. I've read tales about this sword. Aha! The Sword of Light, the Banisher of Evil, the divine artifact, the bane of all undead. Yep. Despite the fact that it is Daedric, it is considered a holy artifact that can destroy the undead and other Daedra. It is. And it was carried by the Fighters Guild 1,000 years ago and used against the forces of evil. It was. Look at that. Despite the fact that it is made of ebony, the metal is so perfect and pretty. But do you know why this ebony metal is white? I can only wonder. Ebony is the blood of the gods. The ebony on Nirn is black, because it is Shor's blood that splattered when he died. This ebony originated from Meridia's blood, rather than Shor, hence the color. How informative! While John was doing the clean-up of the temple, Bryling kept fangirling over the sword he told her to hold for him. Despite her dignity as one of the Thane of Hafingar, she was a great nerd when it came to historical weapons. John made sure that the 20 guards that followed them survived unscathed and are all looking at Bryling in awe and admiration. They needed to witness this in order to feel that Bryling is a heroic person, not some sword pervert who can't pass a second without admiring the damn sword. Anyway, John had to use greed in order to collect all the shadow energy residing in the temple in order to hasten the process of it being fit for use by Meridia's cult again. John and Bryling refused to venerate Meridia but swore to let her followers gather around her shrine peacefully. Moreover, John was intending to use Meridia's cult against the vampires of Fokihar, thus he hit 2 birds with 1 stone. As greed finished the cleansing of all shadow energy and devoured the remaining corrupted shades, John led the group outside and traveled in the mountains again until they reached the place that was his goal from the start, Wolf Skull Cave. Of all places! Bryling sighed on the approach of that particular cave and got closer to John. So, the other undead problem? I believe that a proper Thane wouldn't let two undead nests fester in their hold, John replied. Usually, necromancers keep hiding until they attain sufficient power and strike first. We don't usually catch a necromancer that easily. Bryling justified her ignorance. My sources can pinpoint the activities of magic groups in and keep tabs on them. The worm cult has been infiltrating Skyrim actively and I have a serious animosity with them, so that is that, John said. Impressive, Bryling said, and by sources you mean the black pigeons. I have no idea why people keep calling them that, John replied, raising his arms, but that was not my source. My source this time is that man over there. John waved towards one of the trees where a man wearing heavy winter clothes hid behind. The man was an imperial and a familiar face that Bryling saw before at the Blue Palace. 4 days ago, that man came to see Jarl Elisif, the fair on the day of the wedding of Vittoria Vici, just a few hours before her death. He spoke to her about a problem on the northern part of the hold, and about people disappearing. John Dare personally talked to that man at that time and told him that he will offer as much help as he can. Varnius Junius, my imperial friend from Dragonbridge. John walked to the man and brought him closer. Hello. The man nodded his head as he stood in front of John, Bryling, and the guards. Thane Bryling, at your service, Bryling replied with an attitude worthy of her being a Thane of Hafengar. A Jarl soon, hopefully, John said. While causing her to be flustered, John winked at the people around in order for them to show support for her. My lady, my lord, I am truly grateful for your assistance. The imperial Varnius man bowed to John and Bryling. Just one question, Bryling asked. Wolfskull Cave is far from the main road between Dragonbridge and Solitude. Why would you be related to anyone passing through here? We don't really pass through this place, my lady, but down the road, there is a cave that leads to a snowy grotto. We use that place to preserve many crops and provisions, which we pay half of it to Solitude as annual taxes. The man replied. I see. This is not just a matter of safety but also a huge issue. Bryling nodded. Thane John, it was wise of you to hear this man's plea. John nodded without saying anything. He then prepared the group to go into Wolfskull Cave and deal with whatever is causing the disturbances. The entrance of this cave was narrow and the group had to go in with a two-man formation. As the most efficient in the group, John and Bryling took the lead. I sense signs of true life and false life, John said mysteriously. And in Nordic? Bryling asked. Living and undead. Around 7 in total right after the corner, John replied. Bryling immediately held Dawnbreaker with her 2 hands and nodded to him. All right, I'll greet them first, John said and started to evoke his spells. He formed multiple wheels of fire and light energies, then kept swirling them around before letting them run on the ground. The wheels of Magicka started running like loose wheels and accurately turned around the corner before each finding a target to explode at. Now! Bryling rushed ahead, aware of every step she made, and once she got to the targets, she picked on any of those who were left with Dawnbreaker. Some of the Draugr were still functional and one of them had the ability to cast Frost Spike. The guards could clearly see Bryling swing the blade at the spell that targeted her to shatter it in one swing before splitting the Draugr into 2 and turning it to dust. I'll disable the traps ahead. Make sure to at least capture some necromancers alive. John instructed the guards and walked ahead with Bryling. They did a very good job at devastating the enemies they faced down the cavern until they finally saw what needed to be seen. As the group reached a point in the cave, they found themselves overlooking a large grotto that expanded massively underground. In the sides, a powerful stream of Magicka was gathering from all corners of the cave to the center. In its middle, a third-era military structure stood tall and seemed to have been a part of some secret underground fortification. The streams of magicka gathered in the middle of the cave and voices of chanting became clear from this distance. Wolf Queen, hear our call and awaken. We summon Potima. We summon Potima. Long have you slept the dreamless sleep of death, Potima. No longer. Hear us, Wolf Queen. We summon you. We summon Potima. This was enough for everyone witnessing this scene to simply shiver in fear from the thought that just can't help but cross the mind. The summoning of the undead ghost of Potima, the Wolf Queen of Solitude, the most brutal queen in the history of Skyrim. We need to stop them. Bryling was about to rush in, but John held her shoulder. Slowly, we still have time, John said. The ritual is not in its final phase yet. With the professional magic caster saying that, even the superstitious Nords have to listen as they are up against a force that truly fears. John looked around carefully and deduced that they are on a high ground advantage for now. See the necromancers down there? John instructed the guards. Aim your bows and draw on my signal. The ritual seemed to be far from over and John had his own plan for it, but first, he needed to get rid of the numbers. Draw. Loose. 20 arrows descended upon the necromancer apprentices and the undead guarding the old structures, instantly killing 3 of the mages. On the other hand, the undead gathered at that spot didn't feel a thing. They are yours. John then spoke to Bryling. With Dawnbreaker, Bryling descended off the old ruins and took a swing with the sword and a draugr charging up towards them. Dawnbreaker shone with brilliant light as it crushed through the draugr. One wouldn't imagine a blade crushing anything instead of slicing, but the holy power encasing the sword was enough to devastate the undead. As the sword was done with the draugr, the remaining of its corpse was flung away and exploded with fire in a power akin to the spell of corpse explosion. Another round of arrows followed on, with John ordering the guards to target the enemies coming from a gate in the ruins, which narrowed the target area and did a lot of damage. To add salt to the wounds, he cast flame wall on the ground at that choke point, and all the undead that charged recklessly were badly burnt before they met their end on Dawnbreaker's edge. We summon Potima. As the fight got heated down the ruins and the necromancers threw all the undead they had against the intruders, the ritual masters intensified their ritual and started pouring all their power into it. Lord John, I don't feel good about this, Bryling shouted. Let's push forward. Qhuld Haas. John replied and shouted the words of armor, might, and health. This shout, called Battle State, fortified all the guards around him in addition to Bryling and himself with enough aura to protect and boost them. Axes and shields. Take no prisoners, he commanded the guards afterward. It goes without saying that John has made a strong impression on those guards, enough for him to give commands despite holding no official authority over them and in the presence of their superior, Bryling. The 20 guards dropped their bows and, like Nordic raiders, they charged ahead shouting for Sovngarde and for Skyrim. John added the spell of courage in order to inspire them more and picked a sword to join the fun until what he was waiting for finally happened. From deep within the bones of this cursed cave, a terrifying chill started to transmit with the magicka around the place, and as if a great entity was present, all the guards felt the urge to stand together back to back in order to face this greater threat. Yes, or a lazy voice spoke from all the edges of the cave. Yes, it spoke again with less laziness this time and more excitement. Return me to this realm, the voice said. It was none other than what the necromancers were summoning. The ghost of the old wolf queen. Potima Septim. As our voices summon you, the blood of the innocent binds you, wolf queen, the ritual master shouted as she raised her staff. Summoned with words. Bound by blood. All the necromancers around the cave started to chant in order to hasten the summoning of the old ghost. What? The voice of the wolf queen echoed in the cave, displaying her surprise. What are you doing? And the surprise turned into rage. You fools! You cannot bind me to your wills. And the rage turned into resistance. Summoned with words. Bound by blood. The necromancers chanted repeatedly, as they knew that if they managed to bind and harness the power of the Wolf Queen, they would immediately win against the intruders. Lord John. Bryling felt true fear at that moment. I know. The sword. John shouted, and in a second, both of them exchanged their swords. John had Dawnbreaker in his hand and finally decided to stop screwing around now that Potima is present. Greed, be ready. Lust, cover the sounds. Gluttony, wipe out the necromancers in that tower. Wrath, take hold of the undead and make sure the guards can come up but injure nobody. Pride, turn into a bracelet and gather as much magicka into this sword. For a rare moment, John utilized his present sin artifacts all at once and unleashed an unimaginable power. The power gathered around Dawnbreaker by the action of pride, and then amassed a terrifying amount of light energy into the blade. John aimed the blade towards where the ghost of Potima was present and unleashed a blast that was akin to the power of a dragon's breath. The attack barely grazed the ghost of Potima, which wailed and struggled to put a complete halt to the ritual. John then rushed ahead of the group and started climbing the runs, while cutting down any necromancer and draugr in his path. Support Lord John Dare. Bryling shouted in order to follow him, but a strong wave of undead skeletons blocked their path and made it harder to reach him. I'll be fine. John shouted and kept going. There, he arrived at the sealing place of Queen Potima where the ritual was taking place. The necromancers on the top all saw him coming and were about to piss themselves at the sight of him. The ritual master couldn't let go of the spell, so her apprentices had to defend her, knowing that they stood no chance from the start. Kill them! Suddenly, all the undead gathered around moved against the will of their summoners. What? How? Impossible! But right away, the summons turned against the summoner and slaughtered them immediately. This was the power of wrath, the bone colossus which lords over the skeletal undead. John arrived at the ritual master, which was unable to move yet lost all her focus, and looked at him with terrified eyes. Impressive work, he said, and stood behind her. Let me give you some assistance. John put his hands on the woman's head and started to use magic in the Daedric tongue. His words were terrifying as his power seeped into the brain of the helpless ritual master and erased everything that ever existed in there. Your Highness, John said, addressing Potima, a vessel of living flesh and no memory, may be unworthy but sufficient for now. Treacherous bastard, Potima replied, you possess that accursed blade. You harmed me intentionally. And I apologize. I had to make it look that way in order to get the attention of my allies away. John replied as he showed sincerity. Humph, cunning man. If you were planning to capture me through the mortal body, you should have hidden that black soul gem in your pocket better than this. Potima's words caused John to be confused for a second, since he had no such plan, nor any black soul gem on him at the moment. His plan was to engrave an enchantment on the ritual master's body in order to make Potima. Cunning bitch! John immediately realized what had happened. Potima just bluffed her way out to make him slip, and before he even realized it, she freed herself completely from the ritual. But it was too late. The ghost of the old witch had completely freed itself and escaped through the hidden tunnels of the mountain. Heh! John let out a short laugh and shook his head. That went completely the other way. Then, with a swift slash, he beheaded the ritual master and carried her head, walking down with it to Bryling. The undead crumbled back to eternal rest, and John handed the sword and the head to Bryling. Nice strategy, my lady. You bravely stopped the resurrection of the evil ritual. Then he went on with his mind busy with the Wolf Queen. Chapter 635, The Messenger. And so, we can secure the front gate, the spiral stairs to the dockyard, and the dockyard itself, Brina Marilis said as she pointed at certain areas on the map. The Legion can't spare that many men. We need to keep a heavy watch on the castle, especially with the increase of the spies coming from literally everywhere. Legate Rika seemed reluctant. I'll allow it. General Tullius approved of what Brina Marilis wanted. They have a plan to start holding the foundations of Solitude before it becomes too late. Earlier in the war, it was easy to confront the Stormcloak rebellion and even capture Ulfric Stormcloak, but after the first winter, it became increasingly difficult to fight the snow-loving Nords even with Nord legionaries. The perspective of the imperial authority of Skyrim started to aim for a war of attrition at this rate. Solitude was going to be a major supplier in this kind of war, but they needed total control of it first. It was easy to control Jarl Elisif in the past, since she was a pushover and bore vengeance against Ulfric Stormcloak. That was until someone killed her and left this important seat vacant for greed and opportunity. From this perspective, the court of the Blue Palace is incompetent in many ways, but they have a strong backer who stands against the war. John Dare is that backer, and he jumped on the opportunity to put his candidate, Thane Bryling, on the throne. Meanwhile, the Legion figured out that by controlling the major points of the city, they would completely control it. Sparing Imperial soldiers to act as guards was an act that would cause a bad reputation to the Legion, but the city guards were on the side of Thane Bryling. The Legion took a bad move at first and tried to undermine them by kicking them out of the castle where their barracks was, which made Thane Bryling take them under her wing and empty her manor for them as the new barracks. Right after the departure of Thane Bryling and John Dare, General Tullius tried to open the barracks back and invited Captain Aldous, head of the guards, to go back to the castle, but Falk Firebeard showed up and caused trouble with the Imperial messenger, saying, if the general has anything to say to the honest guardsmen of Hafengar, he better come down here and say it himself. This blocked all the attempts to reconcile with the guards or regain control over them. So, what did our eyes report? Brina Marilis asked the general, who looked at Legate Rika in return. Thane John Dare and Thane Bryling mobilized the 20 guards towards the west and entered an old Daedric shrine. Legate Rika reported. That can't be good, Brina Marilis said. John Dare is an expert at dealing with the Daedra, and whenever he is reported to run into one, he would emerge with a new kind of power. Can we use it against them as an offense against peace? General Tullius asked. From what we know, the shrine belongs to the Daedric Prince Meridia. She is very popular in High Rock, as we know, and her worshippers are actually helpful when it comes to fighting the undead. Legate Rika reported. Did they part from the shrine with anything that looked eye-catchy? Brina Marilis asked. The report noted that they offered some sort of a gem to the statue of Meridia before entering and came out with a sword that had an aura of its own. Any attempts to get a hold of that gem seemed impossible due to the imposing power of the Daedra, and the sword is on Thane Bryling's hand, which will prove difficult to take away even if John Dare isn't around. Well, that sounds ominous. General Tullius didn't like the report. What's in the next one? They traveled further north and entered an old cave. Our spies noticed undead remains on the cave's entrance, and it got very noisy all of a sudden. Thane John and Thane Bryling came out 2 hours after entering with 3 individuals chained up as prisoners. Our spies suspect that they subjugated some sort of necromancers. I see a pattern here, Brina Marilis said. During his rise, John Dare hunted down the pirates and the bandits that were terrorizing Winterhold to gain recognition before becoming a Thane. He also had to invite a lot of people with him so that he could get witnessed doing his heroic. You easily admit he is doing heroics. General Tullius remarked on the words of Brina Marilis. Don't get me wrong, General. John Dare is indeed a hero of Skyrim and someone who is worthy of respect. However, he is a political brute and has no respect for authority. His heroics made him delusional and dangerous. While you may be somewhat right, my lady, I truly beg to differ. John Dare has broken through unimaginable odds to get Winterhold where it is today. If he was any weaker, he would have been preyed upon by rivals. Legate Rika refused Brina's statement. In order to save one city, John Dare risked the livelihood of the citizens of 3 other cities. Brina replied, Dawnstar docks completely failed. Skyrim's eastern imports shifted from both Solitude and Windhelm all to Winterhold. And he became the definite warden of the Sea of Ghosts. The freedom of trade was completely shattered, and anyone who wants to make a living in the sea has to work for either him or one of the big companies. All right. General Tullius stopped the 2 ladies from clashing any further. We are not here to discuss John Dare for the 8's sake. We want to appoint a Jarl friendly to our cause, which is you, Lady Brina, and prevent the throne from being taken by anyone else. I hope that you 2 are on board. I am. Yes, General Tullius. So, any more reports on the movement of our political rivals? The general asked. For now A report to Legate Rika. A voice came from outside interrupting the legate's reply. It just arrived. She immediately went out, opened the report, skimmed through it, and returned with a not-so-pleased face. What? The general asked. Thane John and Thane Bryling headed further north rather than returning all the way to the frozen coast. Freed a snow bear which eventually ended up chasing our scouts. Until the scouts returned to the trail, they found that Thane John had captured 2 more prisoners. Hagravens. Brina Marilis showed a confused face. This far up north? Even the general found it bizarre. After that, they stopped by an old shrine hidden in the mountains for Talos. They offered some belongings of High King Torrig and Jarl Elisif. Now, they are riding fast back towards the city. Silence took over for a while as nobody could get any reading on the situation. Necromancers, Hagravens, Talos Shrine, nothing connects all of that together. Lady Brina, any thoughts? The general asked the self-proclaimed John Dare expert. As I said, he just does more heroics and drags along his audience. Since there is a strange sword in the hands of Thane Bryling, she is getting those heroics attributed to her. The 20 guards they have are merely there to act as witnesses. He will create as much hype for her to make her the leader of the people. Then, when the Emperor senses his eyes to read the situation, she will be the easy pick. Don't forget that John Dare is already carrying a petition of the people to the Elder Council to appoint her a Jarl. Fine. The general nodded. We will do what we can to take care of those guards. Bribery, transference to the Legion, all the way to silencing them for good. The prisoners are the proof of their so-called heroics. We will make sure to take them to our dungeons rather than the palaces. The general said, I know it won't be easy, but make sure it happens, Rika. Yes, sir. Legate Rika responded in high spirit. One last thing. The general continued. Confront John Dare and Bryling respectively about their visit to the shrine of Talos. Make sure they pay for disobeying imperial law. Legate Rika paused and Thane Brina seemed bothered. What? However, the general was bothered by the lack of response. With all due respect, sir, I don't think I can obey such an order. Legate Rika replied. What did you just say? The general faced disobedience for the first time in a very long while. Sir, please. I am a Legion soldier and a Nord. Legate Rika conjured up all her courage, not a Thalmor justiciar. Did you just? The general was infuriated by her reply even more. I think what Legate Rika just tried to say is, Thane Brina jumped in hastily while thinking of what to say, this job can't be done by a legionary. Ahem. I think we can just tip the Thalmor attaché that is located here in the castle without doing anything that might sway the public sentiment away from our cause. The general kept staring at Legate Rika intensely before speaking once again. Such disobedience! It won't be forgiven ever again. He said, and I see the point of what Lady Brina said. Make their clash with the Thalmor rats, but don't bring up John Dares when you tip them off. Yes, General. Legate Rika excused herself and left. Humph. The general was still displeased with how inflexible Rika can be before snorting. Nords. Thane Brina Marilis surely heard him, but she had to keep it in as well. Setting someone up because they had anything to do with Talos was a major taboo between Nords despite how often it occurred. Still, she had to think of something in order to get Legate Rika out of trouble. Do you think any of these sly moves used by politicians will hinder his plans? The general interrupted her chain of thoughts by posing such a question. Undermining his efforts will serve as a good way to buy enough time for our allies in Cyrodiil to get the Imperial Council to make the right decision. Add that to the attempts to stop his envoys from reaching Cyrodiil first, it should be good enough for now. Brina Marilis said. Is there anything to be wary of until that time? The general asked. Spies. Brina replied again. If John Dare is up to the details of our plans, he will rework his own plans to disturb ours. We are not amateurs, Lady Brina. We know how to keep out a few of John Dare's pigeons. The general said with pride before opening up a drawer. TSK? The dried fish snacks have run out again. I should have told Rika to bring some on her way back. Cyrodiil, the Imperial City. I truly love this place, John. It is so perfect to raise children. I am glad it is to your liking, wife. The schools, the buildings, the gardens. While I have missed Skyrim's tundra the past 2 months, we can make a decent living here managing the company's outpost. Well, it doesn't have that much mead over here, but I am sure we'll manage to import some. Oh, silly husband. I worked as a tavern maiden for years. You think I can't brew you mead? That, my dear, is a blessing to any true Nord if his wife can brew mead. You know what? I'll buy you a mead house outside the city after you recover from giving birth. The husband put his hand on his wife's rising belly as he warmly smiled at her. Oh, John. The wife smiled warmly. Oh, right. I will have to go now. The husband remembered something. It is about time I go meet them. Right, the 3rd day after the news arrives at the city. John, you will do this, don't worry. Bah. I am not worrying. I am the Dare Dragon Company's executive manager in Cyrodiil. This position needs a heart of steel, not some milk drinker. Quit stalling and go already. They must be waiting. The husband had to part with the wife displaying a bitter face. After all, this is the 3rd day after the news of the death of Jarl Elisif arrives at the capital of Cyrod. The petition of the citizens of Hafingar to appoint was transferred to him by magic not long ago, and it carried the hopes of the people to the Elder Council. This document was supposed to be carried by a caravan, but John Dare's big diversion was nothing but a complete hoax as usual. The ones with whom he could trust this document were his old friends and the most diplomatic associates he has, John Battleborn and Alfina Greymane, the ones currently present under the shade of the white gold Imperial Tower. Chapter 636, Setting the Stage. Those are the guards you asked for? Captain Aldous said came closer towards John. That's 40 of our men under your disposal, sir. No. John replied, just 20. What do you mean, sir? Captain Aldous asked. I am returning the 20 men I borrowed. I will enter the city with the other 20. John said, they won't be recognized for the achievement of following Thane Bryling when she gets to be a Jarl, but what is important is that she will surely recognize their hard work. But why is all that? Why change the men you have with others? The captain couldn't understand what John wanted. Recognition is the problem, Captain. I don't want the Imperial Legion's eyes to recognize them. It is part of a big plan, John said. A big plan. That's what John promised the Court of Solitude. Only none of them anticipated how big this plan actually is. John was planning for this for months. Using the assassination attempt on Vittoria to assassinate Jarl Elisif, sending John Battleborn and Alfina Greymane 2 months in advance to Cyrodiil without telling them why, manipulating the Dark Brotherhood through Serana as his agent, and giving leads on the Dark Brotherhood to the Imperial Intelligence Agency in order to cut loose ends once he is done with it. But why is he changing the 20 men that were following him and Thane Bryling with another 20 men? The answer is that he got the news that the Imperial Legion is going to disturb his operation by targeting those 20 men with all manner of methods. The 20 men that followed him and Thane Bryling were basically the witnesses of liberating the Temple of Meridia, acquiring the Holy Blade Dawnbreaker, getting rid of the necromancers that tried to resurrect the Wolf Queen Potima, and getting rid of the ghost of the Wolf Queen. Those 4 achievements are nothing short of heroic to the people of Solitude, since they display courage, leadership, resourcefulness, and strength. John found out that General Tullius was planning to undermine those achievements through all sorts of tricks, and so he prepared in return. If the general plans to take away the witnesses, John will replace them with others, which will make the rumors still flow. The guards may not be pleased that they are not getting recognized, and their achievements will be taken by the other 20 guards, but John personally explained to them what will happen and had to persuade them one by one. That is why he had to take a detour to go hunt some Hagravens and openly visit a shrine of Talos. He needed a physical face for the evil that exists under the hold and a little trap for the Imperials so that he can make a scene. Of course the trap was as obvious as day, but he just needed to keep them occupied with something to be wary of. After all, he needed to extract as much information from the commanding chamber of the Imperial Legion where the general plots for his next move. John sent his best spy in there, and she has already made the place her own. Nefertiti's power to occupy any place was never this good before. That aside, John was actually worried about Brina Marilis. The woman's character is as straight as a sword and her attitude is as sour as a whole sack of lemon, especially towards him. John wanted to recruit that woman many times and make her move from Dawnstar to Winterhold, but she didn't like his offers. Dawnstar was her proud home, and despite the political childishness shown by Jarl Skald the Elder, she still remained loyal to her home. It is praiseworthy and all, but the sour lemon between John Dare and Brina Marilis was only bound to grow into a lemon orchid after John completely took over the sea business. Originally in the game's plot, Brina Marilis was the opposition presence of the Stormcloaks in Dawnstar, and she was to replace Jarl Skald if he was ever removed by the Imperial Legion. That, however, became a pipe dream, and she was invited to Solitude in order to be the face of the Legion on Solitude's Jarl throne. However, John didn't kill an innocent woman in order for the Imperial Legion to have its way with the city. And with that attitude in mind, John accompanied Thane Bryling back to Solitude on the head of 20 guards, dragging 2 Hagravens, and carrying a visibly magical artifact. For that, a display of achievements was necessary, but the drama had to come first. "Hold it right there!" The Imperial soldiers on the city gate stopped the group and seemed not willing to let things pass easily. "It's all right, boys. What's the matter?" John asked as he effortlessly descended from his Atronach horse. "Sorry, sir. But you can't roam around the city while dragging those monstrosities around." The officer on the gate pointed towards the Hagravens that were brought in chains. John looked at the 2 old hideous things, then back to the officer. "Really? Goddamn, soldier. And here I thought some reinforced chains with state-of-the-art enchantments would stop them. Truly, I wouldn't have known what I could do without you," John replied, showing a slight grin to the officer. The Imperial officer kept putting on a stern face under his plumed helmet and didn't get triggered by John. After all, he was specially placed here to annoy John within the bounds of law, and he was the first of many along the way. I get it, officer." John nodded. "These Hagravens are suspects of a hideous crime. In their cave, we found evidence that may be related to the murder of our late Jarl Elisif. We found an old comp that once belonged to the Jarl with a few strands of hair, sheets with blood spots, and many ugly trinkets that all scream black magic. We really wanted to burn those witches in the public square." "I am sorry, sir, but this is against the law. The officer refused. Ah, I see. John nodded again. Then what do you think we should do, officer? We shall behead them on the spot. The officer responded and snapped his fingers. Suddenly, and as if they were ready for this, a bunch of Imperial soldiers showed up carrying a greatsword and intending to make fast work of the Hagravens. No, no, hold it right there. John waved his hands and stopped them immediately. Believe me, you don't want to do that. What do you mean, sir? The officer interfered fiercely. These monstrosities are not entering the city, nor will be allowed to be thrown back into the wild. They must die here and now. I know. Just hold on for a damn second. He then approached the officer, put his arm on his shoulder, and pulled him closer. It is truly depressing to say, but you're worsening the situation for me here. Tell you what, you can have this and call yourself a champion of the gate. John suddenly called out a large sack and held it with one hand in front of the officer. The sack was both heavy and clicky, indicating that its content was a ton of coins. The sight of John Dare attempting to bribe the city gate officer in broad daylight was just baffling and made the people gathered around whisper and look at each other weirdly. Even the city gate officer was stunned and didn't know what to do. He was told to hinder John Dare and strip him of his trump cards before he entered the city. He was told nothing about attempting to arrest John Dare, who is one of the most powerful and influential men on the continent. Sir, I can't possibly think about or even consider this, the officer said. Seriously, this is nothing at all. Just take it and then make your superiors see it too. You may need it, guys, John said. Everyone's jaws simply dropped. John's bribery was even meant for this officer's superior. And he just said this openly. Sir, this is unthinkable, the officer responded. Deliver it for the general too. He's a man with keen eyes for such things. John added. Even bribing the general? John Dare has just reached a level of boldness that was never seen in Skyrim and its history. Sir, I am sure you know you're someone important, but you can't do that. The Imperial Legion doesn't operate this way. We have our pride. The officer couldn't stand it anymore. The situation seemed to take an unimaginable turn, but seeing Thane Bryling not commenting on John's actions made many question her. The brave officer who stood against bribery and turned down such a large sum was greatly admired, especially in front of the imposing John Dare. Meanwhile, John Dare was making the face. Bruh. What on God's green nern are you talking about? John said, and then tore the sack with his hand. I really didn't want anyone to see it, but here you go. What was inside the sack was no gold, silver, or gems. It was a head. A Hagraven's severed head, and the head was alive. The head was held by chains that covered it thoroughly and restricted its mouth. Those who saw the head could see its evil eye turning around and gazing at them with pure malice, as she was unable to say anything. It was also understood that these chains are the things that gave the money illusion. I don't know about you, man, but I've never encountered a Hagraven that doesn't die if you cut its head. This thing is super unholy, and we need a priest to purify the fuck out of it in order to make a proper execution, John said. He wasn't bribing the officer, he was showing him the seriousness of the situation. The officer felt like trying to process his situation as he was too close to John and could see the faint smile John had. It seems like John had him playing on his hand from the very beginning. All right, my lord. We shall notify the high priest right away. The officer couldn't help but comply before turning around, open the gate. Passing the first hurdle on the way, John was simply warming up to bullshit his way through the city. The living head trick was a neat one, though. It didn't just end with the lowly gate officer, the party was stopped right after entering by many other officers. The Legion enlistment officer was the first to drop by and claimed that 11 guards of the ones who went on the raiding party seemed to have enlisted to join the Legion some time ago. John knew that this situation was true and not faked, since many guards tried to join the Legion at some point and he has no right to stop that. However, the thing he did yesterday night when he switched the guards secretly was for this. No matter which name the enlistment officer called, they were not present at John's party. The officer checked again and again, until he eventually gave up with a sour face. He seemed to have got the impression that when he requested the list of names from the barracks earlier yesterday, the names he was given were not true. After that, a Thalmor justiciar showed up to make trouble for the party, but for some weird reason, that justiciar had no idea that John Dare was the one leading the party at all. It seemed that the Imperial Legion ratted out on the party and carefully covered the fact that John Dare was a part of it. John didn't need any bullshit at this point, since all he did was to raise his hand and wave it to slap the justiciar, but the elf was fast enough to disappear from sight. It is known that John Dare treats the Thalmor as sworn enemies and kills them whenever he runs into them. The fourth hurdle by far was the most troublesome one. It seemed that the previous one was put to shake Bryling's momentum, but this is where the showdown shall be. In Solitude's central plaza, General Tullius and Thane Brina Marilis, along with a score of influential people, all gathered to meet with Thane Bryling. The scene attracted the eyes of many people, and it was obvious that a scheme was brewing. Those who know the inner workings of Solitude knew very well that both parties are of absolute power, thus there won't be bloodshed in this scene. Moreover, the rumors that Thane Bryling conquered 2 undead crypts with John Dare were already flying around the city with no wings. Counter-propaganda was also spread that John Dare was the one conquering while Thane Bryling was merely a spectator, but that didn't go well as planned by the Imperials, since Bryling has a fiery personality that everyone knows about. But what was surprising was the rumors spreading about Thane Brina Marilis, who was said to have subjugated a gang of pirates outside the city and seemed to be cracking on the location of the assassins of Jarl Elisif. It seemed that the two ladies were about to have a relentless argument that day. Chapter 637 The True Face of Evil. In a world where evil has many faces, openly punishing evil was a sort of public amusement. Beheading outlaws, burning witches, and whipping criminals were ordinary and welcome sights. Hagravens are notorious for their ways in witchcraft, and many simpletons would usually go and secretly meet them for all sorts of spells and potions. Things like a spell to make a man love a woman over another woman, a spell to kill the child of a certain couple, a spell to destroy a relationship between 2 lovers, and even spells to make men or women impotent. These were the sorts of shitty services Hagravens were happy to offer. However, the more shocking thing was the number of people who were willing to pay for such services. As if the entire world has lost all of its humanity, the number of spells gathered by the guards was just innumerable. Lay them on the ground over there. Don't touch them with your bare skin and wait for the priests to come and do their proper work. Thane Bryling commanded the guards following her as they entered the plaza together. In there, the one frowning upon such a situation was General Tullius and Thane Brina Marilis, who were in town for similar reasons as John Dare and Thane Bryling. I am terribly sorry, but this place is locked for an execution an hour from now. An Imperial legionary advanced towards Bryling and tried to stop the guards from entering the execution grounds. It's all right. We'll be taking things from here on out. However, a big hand held the legionary's shoulder and almost threw him off balance, but kept a good grip on him still. The soldier wanted to get his hand on his blade, but as soon as his eyes spotted the owner of the hand holding his shoulder, he knew there was a big problem. A smiling redhead with immense power, or rather, the smiling redhead with immense power, John Dare. A man who tends to solve his issues with power and money. In other words, something beyond a normal legionary's pay grade. I believe you are putting your hand on a Legion soldier's body during his duty, Thane John of Winterhold? A voice came to John's ears. Is there a law against that? John asked as he turned around and recognized the one who spoke, Thane Brina of the Pale. Actually, there is, she said. Actually, I didn't know, John replied before letting go of the Legion soldier. The soldier moved away immediately as he kept rubbing his shoulder, but he seemed fine. And please, evacuate this area since it is reserved for official business, she said and turned away. I am sure a normal citizen has no authority to convey official orders, he said. Oh. She turned around with an amused face. I happen to be a civilian advisor of the Imperial Legion. So, from a Legion official to a normal citizen of Skyrim, please leave this area as you happen to be obstructing official business. Oh. John returned the same amused face, and I happen to be a deputy for Thane Bryling working with the city guards. You know, I am something of an official myself. You're a Thane deputy? She asked, looking at him up and down. And you're a civilian advisor. John smiled. We're both moving up in the world, ain't we? You're still obstructing official bussy. She joined her arms together, but John cut her words short. Piss off, he said while still maintaining his cool smile before turning immediately perplexed. I am sorry, did I just speak my mind out loud? God, this witchcraft has some nasty effect. Brina's face hardened as John kept fooling around. She failed to stop his entourage of guards from entering the place and laying out all the spells and witch hexes on the ground. General Tullius had to intervene himself at this point. I see some intruders are still here. He came from behind Thane Brina, Thane Bryling, Thane John, please take your business elsewhere. Wow. You're really so short up close, John said once he saw the general before holding his mouth, as if he said something that he wasn't supposed to say. Everyone lost their words as John made an awkward face and the general's expressions turned dark. I am sorry, General. Thane John was infected by some witchcraft that, Thane Bryling immediately intervened as she looked at John and not believing that she was following up on his bullshit. He speaks out what he thinks without restraint. That's a dangerous curse, John added. Indeed? Bryling nodded. Very bad curse. The execution grounds are closed, the general said as he turned expressionless. Well, the area is wide, we can have joint executions. Celebrate together, John said cheerfully. After the official business is done, you can do whatever you want with those things. The general refused to give John a leeway as he looked disdainfully at the Hagravens. Actually, we are here officially. Bryling came forward. We are using the execution grounds. The general was displeased with Bryling talking that way. You're overstepping your position, Thane, he said. My position is to enforce law and maintain order, General, she replied. And from where I stand, your actions of occupying the execution grounds for a few criminals you caught in my hold is vulgar and overstepping the jurisdiction of the guards of Hafengar and the Court of Solitude. By law, a Legion soldier can detain and arrest, but the criminal would be handed to the local authority to be tried and passed judgment on. Thane Bryling spared nothing against General Tullius, which was wild compared to how things used to run in the past, even during the days of Elisif. Damn girl. John spoke then acted as if he said that unintentionally. Everyone ignored John, trying not to fall to his provocations, but it seemed that Bryling was ready for a brawl. Those criminals are pirates who attacked a Legion ship, Thane Brina said. Therefore they are to be punished by the Legion and within its jurisdiction. Hoax? John spoke sarcastically but covered his mouth again. Truly sorry. Perhaps the witchcraft infecting Thane John Dare is going to be problematic. Shouldn't you be escorted to a place to rest? General Tullius asked. And miss all the trash talking? No way. John said happily but acted as if he shouldn't have said that. Last warning. Take your business away. The general almost became too annoyed by John's act. I wonder why the Legion is occupying these execution grounds when they have their castle ground, John asked. It is closed for secret drills. Thane Bryling mocked them alongside John. Last warning, Thanes. The general had enough as he put his hand on the hilt of his sword. Lord John, Lady Bryling. But immediately, the place was swarmed with hold guards led by Captain Aldous. They came in numbers and seemed serious and ready for business. Brina Marilis immediately held the arm of the general away from the hilt, and started whispering something to the general that if they were to act hostile in front of some guards, this would nip her run for the Jarl position in the bud. It seems that our imperial friends are denying us the public execution grounds. Thane Bryling said, "Fine, we will move over there." Bryling pointed at a vacant spot in the middle of the road not too far from the execution ground. The thing which made both Thane Brina Marilis and General Tullius feel very proud was that they pushed their opponents back. "Plant the burning poles," Captain Aldous ordered the guards. "Sir, the priests have arrived to purify the curses," a guard reported. "Fine. Don't hold anything back. Tie up the Hagravens to the poles and get the priests to work." The moment both General Tullius and Brina Marilis celebrated the fact that they managed to chase away John Dare and Thane Bryling, they noticed that where the burning poles were located was blocking the way to the execution grounds. Complaining won't work since it is not against the law to occupy the street by an official for any matter they see fit, especially if that official is a landlord with the scale of Thane Bryling. But the situation has escalated too fast to stop at the moment. With the arrival of the priests from the Temple of the Divines, a chaotic situation occurred. This hex was laid by the Hagraven Anthinotha in the name of the Lady of Rot Namra that Elka of Dragonstone loses her sight. The hex carries desecration for the name of Lord Akatosh and is considered sacrilege. A priest announced, "No! How could this happen? How evil!" The situation was merely beginning and many people started to crowd around the burning sticks while the priests started unsealing the spells and going over them. A witchcraft spell is done differently from usual spellcasting for it to have its effects. A witch would gather power through many mediums, but she always needs a trace of her prey, be it a few strands of hair, some clipped nails, blood on a sheet of cloth, or even broken teeth. The witch would then start putting those traces in a spell and draw power from oblivion. They would use rituals in the name of certain Daedric princes to let this magic flow from oblivion to Mundus. After that, the contract happens. The contractor, who is usually a person, specifies the kind of harm they wish to fall on the victim, and the witch writes it with Daedric script. They also must insult the divine which the victim worships and praise the Daedra that will be the source of the curse. In other words, the contractor and the witch must commit sacrilege against the divines and do a ritual for the Daedra in order to let this curse befall. The name of the contractor is always written in the spell, but the priests couldn't utter it out loud. Obviously, it would cause public disorder if such secrets were revealed. However, some could guess who is who. The contractors' names were listed and sent to the guards' headquarters in order to detain them later on. Either way, the situation continued until nightfall. Half of the city was crowded over the place, and no one even glanced over the boring pirate execution held by the Legion. Still, it was a depressing display for humanity at its worst. A brother cursing his brother with impotence in order to hog out the inheritance with his kids, a sister cursing his sister to make her skin wither so that she can marry instead, a woman cursing another that all her children die at birth, a woman cursing another that she would never marry, a merchant cursing his rival with poverty, a fisherman cursing another with bad luck. Too much ugliness, too much unfairness. Between the victims, not everyone knew who would wish them this much harm, and they kept wailing and screaming for the priests while demanding to reveal the contractors. Among the gathering people, many hid their faces as they knew what they had done and wished not to be recognized. But the high priest eventually came out to address these matters. "Whoever has contracted a witch for a hex, may the divines curse you and kick you out of their mercy. O good people! Those who contract the power of the Daedra will always receive a backlash once that contract is broken, and the divines will punish them greatly for disturbing the natural order and insulting the gods. Rejoice, brothers and sisters, for the divines are as just as they are merciful. Thank you, High Priest. John jumped on the stage behind the priest right away. I was also contacted with a hex, and it was no joke, folks, it was no joke at all. John turned around and winked to Brina Marilis, who was watching from far away. Of course it was no joke at all, since he wasn't joking when he threw some insults at her earlier. Either way, I think it is time for you to heal and get back to your lives. Thanks to the good gesture of Lady Bryling, John dragged Thane Bryling closer and raised her hand that was holding Dawnbreaker. The Dare Dragon Company's Dare Pharmacy has been ordered to cooperate with the Temple of Solitude to offer high-grade healing tonics and medicines for the victims of this vile magic. We are now ready to punish the evil witches with the power of this mighty holy sword. John grabbed the sheath and removed it off the sword to show the beautiful and elegant Dawnbreaker. Bryling held the blade upwards and contemplated its beauty for a while, thinking of the actions she had taken while accompanying John. It was nothing wrong at all, but she employed many things to her benefit. She has gained popularity and achieved enough merits, but it wasn't as selfless as she would always do. But it was fun. Now all she needed to do was to light the mounds of firewood under the burning poles with the fire that comes from the sword's enchantment and deliver justice upon the enemies of the divine. My lady, my lord, wait. But something out of their plan happened. A priest of Akatosh, who was one of the 8 priests working on unsealing the hexes, rushed from his spot towards John and Bryling. What's wrong, Brother Varek? Bryling asked. You need to see this, he said, and opened one of the hexes to John and Bryling. It was thick with the smell of urine, which the witches would use as an ingredient in their unholy contracts, but the nasty smell meant that it was not an old one. It was also written in Daedric letters, had a lot of blonde strands of hair, written all in circles and centered with the sigil of Bothia. On its edges, it has the sigils of Talos, Kilkreath, Arche, and Mara all drawn while flipped over, indicating disrespect. Holy shit! John couldn't help but curse. What does it say? Bryling asked, as she was incapable of reading Daedric. John looked around and saw that the noises had died down. He must announce what's written now that the priest knows what's in it too. Curses and bad omens. Death befalls all but the timeless. Bring disorder by death. In the name of Bothia, prince of deceit and conspiracy. Let Talos, who offers kingship, topple off his throne. Let Kilkreath, who offers healing, be blinded away from the sick. Let Arche, who carries the souls, offer no rest. And let Mara, who offers protection, wail over Elisif of Solitude as she dies a horrible death. The words were so sacrilege, but John realized how awful this all turned out to be. Someone cursed Elisif with a death curse, and he was the one who sent Jullinar to deliver the killing blow. It almost shocked Solitude to its core, not almost. It completely shocked Solitude as the people looked at John with pale faces and sunken hearts. Even Brina Marilis, who stood watching it all from afar, and General Tullius, who was returning to the castle, all turned towards him. And they all waited for the name of the killer. The contractor. The one that played this whole situation from the backstage and instigated disorder. The contractor is the Great Hidden One. Lot Suvanjian. John immediately snatched Dawnbreaker from Bryling's hands and aimed the sword at the night sky with a terrifying amount of magicka. A beam of light rose from the blade and formed a pillar that pierced through the skies. The light hit a certain height and then expanded in a circular burst that illuminated the night sky as if it was the time of day for a short few seconds. These few seconds were enough for the entire Solitude to witness it all. A dragon far in the sky, a dark one similar to the color of night, flying gracefully in the sky without a single roar. It was there for a second before flapping his wings at maximum power and disappearing back in the darkness without a trace. Was it an illusion projected by John Dare? No, it is not. It was a true dread hidden in the sky that they all felt equally. Leader of the dragon cult's secret dragon horde, the fifth in line from Alduin in the chain of command, the cunning dragon that fights without a shred of dignity and manipulates kings and jarls to fight against each other. The great hidden one, Lot Suvan. Chapter 638 Crisis in Solitude 1. This is unbearable. Unbearable. A dragon plots to murder a jarl and devise a plot? You want me to believe that? General Tullius shouted as he strode left and right in the throne hall of the Blue Palace. It is quite hard to believe, yes, but Thane John has shown us the truth of the matter. Sybil Stentor refuted the general's frustrated remarks. But it is still hard to believe. It feels as if the world is getting stranger. Politics with elves I can handle, but dragons. Legate Rika took a seat and put her helm down as she seemed lost in thought. I know what it seems like, but Thane John always told us time and time again that dragons are no brainless beasts. All of us heard the stories of the intellect of the dragons. Is it hard to imagine them plotting and scheming? Thane Bryling said. But why can't just a dragon come from the sky? Use his superior strength and speed to kill one powerless human like Lady Elisif in plain sight rather than all the scheming and witchcraft? John Dare is a wizard and I know he employs magic a lot to achieve his purposes. And let's not forget that he commands a beast that looks like a dragon. Brina Marilis attacked John immediately. Are you mad? Thane John has exposed something that we all felt. The presence of a dragon. I don't think there's magic that can fake such a thing. Falk Firebeard responded aggressively. God damn it. Thane John this, Thane John that. Why can't the lot of you speak a single sentence without mentioning him at least twice? Are you all officials from a court for real or are you just some twats that follow whatever that man says? General Tullius couldn't endure it anymore and started shouting. General, this is disrespectful. Falk Firebeard lashed back. Really? Then tell me, Falk. In this time of emergency, where in oblivion is that dear Thane John of yours? Brina Marilis asked. I'm here. The response came directly from John, whom no one expected to be around. As they all looked in his voice's direction, they discovered that he was sitting behind some wooden room divider with a ton of maps and papers around him. The group moved and watched what he was up to, which added more to their confusion. He hung a big map on the room dividers and started putting notes, drawings, pins, and strings all over that map. From what it seemed, he was trying to figure out something regarding the current predicament, as many of the small notes he put on the map carried words like Jarl Elisif, the Dragon Cult, Dark Arts, the Dark Brotherhood, Vittoria Vici, the Secret Dragon Horde, Alduin the World Eater, and many notes pinned around the map. From what they could tell, he's already started investigating and looking for the missing pieces. What are you doing? General Tullius asked him. Looking for a dragon, John replied. Are you expecting me to believe this facade? General Tullius asked again. I am going to pretend I didn't hear you. John replied, even calmer than before, without looking at the general's general direction. Stop wasting our time and contact the Dragonborn then. Don't try to act sincerely. We all understand what you're up to. Brina Marilis said as she raised her voice. Good for you. John replied calmly again. Don't you see? Brina Marilis pointed at him. He's doing it again. Calculating his winning and losses before deciding whether or not to send his pet Dragonborn after it. This is blasphemous. Bryling retorted at Brina. What gives you the right to point fingers when you are here in solitude for your own benefit as well? I am here to stop this maniac, Brina replied, and he's playing all of you like a fiddle. It was the first time for John to look away from his document and look up towards the people around him. Is that all there is to it? Stop me? John asked. I don't even feel like slowing down, Brina. His smile was there, but sure as hell he wasn't smiling. He wasn't happy or pleased like his usual self, but he was very focused. You see the problem here, right? A dragon wanted the Jarl of Solitude dead, and without even trying to do the effort himself, he just did it. John said. Then hunt it down. Brina spoke back. And here's the problem, you see? You say it, I say him. Do you realize the difference? John asked. Quit lecturing us. Brina didn't want to get dragged in John's circles. You just want them all to worship you, don't you? You hold the dragons on one hand, the Dragonborn on another, and you keep waltzing around Skyrim selling the sickness and its cure. Bravo! Now you figured me out very well. John clapped. People like you know nothing but suspicion and fear. You see the world ending and you just find someone to blame and make an enemy of. That's being wary of the likes of you. That's being ignorant. You see the sickness dropping people around you, and once you see a cure, the first thing you do is to suspect it. Being wary is good, but don't spread ignorance wherever you go. I won't, St. I am done arguing. John raised his hand and spoke with a voice filled with power. Arguing is fun, but I think I figured out what the dragon is after. Don't even. Brina wasn't interested in what John was about to say, but a hand was raised in front of her face. What does the dragon want? General Tullius asked as he interrupted Brina Marilis. General, this man can't be trusted. Brina Marilis pleaded with the general not to listen. Enough. If you have something to solve this with, say it. If you don't, I'll hear him. Tullius seemed extremely displeased with the last argument as he turned to John again. Answer me. The dragon clearly wants us to argue, John said. Elaborate. Well, the leaders of Solitude all gathered in one place arguing their brains out, which means that everyone here will miss something important. John elaborated. So, a diversion tactic? The general asked. Yes. Something big is happening, I don't know where, but somehow. The dragon was watching us this entire time, and he knew what we're up to. The death of Jarl Elisif is part of a bigger scheme. The dragons didn't come from the sky and kill the Jarl on their own because they wanted her death to be done by human hands. If that happens, the humans will start doubting each other. That's why the death curse used by them was meant to bring Elisif's demise, and someone acted on it without fully knowing. John said as he realized his plan to assassinate and replace Elisif helped the dragons with their goal. So it doesn't have to be the dragon cultists. No. I highly doubt it. They are being wary and they wouldn't have used the curse if they would do it themselves. Their goal is to keep humans busy with each other. So you're saying that we're being distracted but you don't know more? Sybil Stentor said. Yes. John nodded. I haven't done any scrying since the dragon appeared. She said, I need to go back to my duties then. Sybil Stentor hurried back to her room and the rest remained. What else do you know, Thane John? Even the things you are unsure of? Thane Bryling asked. The dragon cult is a cult that serves the dragons as. John was about to reply but he was interrupted. We know about the situation of that cult, General Tullius said. John has spread many messages about the Alduin situation and the dragon crisis during his marketing campaign for the Dragonborn. All right. If the dragon cult is still obsessed with ending this world as we know, their goal is to cause as many casualties as possible to feed Alduin. No thanks to anyone in this room, the Empire and the Stormcloak are barely able to fight each other, so the dragons should be desperate. If Solitude falls into chaos, the Stormcloak will take this opportunity to advance and reignite the war. So your plan is falling apart? Brina Marilis asked with a faint, disdainful smile. Excuse me? John narrowed his eyes. You are the one who caused the war to come to such a stalemate, don't deny it. Now that both sides are barely throwing stones at each other, the dragons would weaken one side enough to make those stones really deadly. Brina explained. As much as he hated it, John only let out a sigh that didn't confirm or deny her claims, but there was no hiding it since he was against the civil war from the start. But killing Jarl Elisif would only confuse us. It won't achieve anything sensible. Unless, John said and returned back to thinking. Unless their plans are already in motion without difficulties, Bryling said. If I were a leader of that third front, my goal would be. General Tullius thought a bit before looking around. TSK, this is bad. The Emperor? John asked. If they were to kill His Majesty, it would. Not the Emperor. General Tullius shook his head. We have to worry about ourselves at the moment. The target is us. The insight of General Tullius was strangely on point. We're all gathered in one place like putting all the eggs in a single basket. Damn it. John caught on immediately. My lords. My lords. A guard came running towards the throne room as all the figures in there looked towards him. They all felt their hearts sink. Report, soldier. Thane Bryling responded. There's a man, an adventurer. He said that he encountered the dragon not too far from the city. He came running to report. The guard said. Let him in. General Tullius spoke. No. He can be. Bryling wanted to stop the general but was quick to respond. Trust me. He said, then nodded towards the guard. The guard retreated and the general looked at everyone present in the room and spoke faintly. I suppose you all feel it, right? He then looked at John. You too? Yes? John nodded. I don't feel anything, Falk Firebeard said. Exactly. John and General Tullius seemed to be agreeing together. We took the silence for granted, and now we got isolated in the palace. John said, We are under attack. In front of the eyes of the people present in the court, a frail-looking man walked in while wearing a large cloak that seemed to have been torn and tattered from various spots. Approach. Thane Bryling called for the man to come up the stairs in order to speak his piece to the lords. 2 stairways were leading up, one left and one right. Both were a replica of the other, so one wouldn't really bother with the choice if he was at an equal distance from both stairs. But that man had to bother because the one on his left was riddled with all sorts of hidden magical traps, while the other one was empty. What sort of test is this? If you are onto someone's trick, you don't make it this obvious. The moment this man hesitates, he will be seen through. And he has already taken a moment to think about his next action, so he has been found out. It wasn't easy to infiltrate Solitude, hide away from the strong court mage that is scrying all the hostile actions inside the hold, wait for the targets to get together, and strike. The plan itself was supposed to be put on hold when the Jarl of Solitude was killed by unknown assassins, and not the dragon cult, but the dragon overlord decided to go on with the plan either way. And here they all are, facing the targets like they were supposed to be, but their disguise was seen through since only Thane Bryling was the only one to show herself. The man finally dropped the act and took out a small knife. Guards! Bryling spoke and raised her hand. Arrest him. 2 guards, who were supposedly stationed outside the hall, walked in and unsheathed 2 knives similar to the one held by the assassin. In unison, the 3 of them threw their knives with extreme precision towards Bryling's head, throat, and heart. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The knives passed through Bryling, whose body started flickering but seemed completely untouched. Obviously, someone played with illusions. The 3 assassins decided to take the right stairs and immediately rush whoever is up there, but something was way faster than them. The runes which they discovered on the left stairway just a moment ago suddenly started moving and reached the right stairway faster than them. Actually, it wasn't racing them or moving from its place, it was spreading. The runes of the magical script no longer seemed to be trying to hide and filled the walls, halls, and ceilings with an array of circles and colors. Even the ground under the assassin's feet was consumed with runes. It was an array of almost everything, from small novice runes to large expert runes, from powerful destruction runes to harmonious restoration runes, and when the entire fabric of runes was connected together, it started spinning and moving like clockwork. Bzzzt flashbang. right from where no one expected, 3 runes were activated and a bolt of lightning, a flash of light, and a burst of fire struck the 3 assassins, leaving them with holes in their bodies that dropped dead and unmoving. Up above the throne hall, John stood as he held his staff with both hands and put all his focus into his spell. Around him was everyone from Solitude's elite. He just displayed a spell that can only be described as a marvel of magic that no one less than an arch-wizard is capable of casting. The spell was called Belly of the Beast, and it was given that name for a good reason, as it was ready to devour everything in its path. But no one was out of the woods yet. 3 down, 100 more to go. Chapter 639 Crisis in Solitude 2. As the ashes of the assassins scattered on the floor, the group walked ahead and saw the destruction that John caused. "We needed to capture them alive," General Tullius said. "You'll have plenty of opportunities," John replied, and as he finished his words, the sound of broken glass was heard. "Help! Killers! Help!" A young palace maid came out from a deep hall from within the palace as she seemed to be scared of something, but just as she stepped near the ground, a bolt of magicka descended on her head from a ceiling rune and blasted it to oblivion. Thane John. Is that? The scene was horrifying since a teenage girl was just shot by John's spell. However, when the girl's body fell on the floor, a knife slid down from her sleeve, and a mask flew off her blasted head. A dragon priest mask. John saw the mask and frowned. John didn't notice it, but when he looked at the 3 assassins earlier, he noticed that they have some sort of dragon priest mask as well. Something's off. The dragon cult has a handful of masks that indicate authority as the priest becomes the ruler at a dragon's behest. If that's the case, then why are there 4 of this precious item in just one place? John had to put those ideas aside for now, as the palace was already swarming with assassins, as the surprise strategies seemed to be a failure. From the northern wing, almost 30 assassins showed up, and the same from the southern wing. And they all rushed in without making a single sound. "Defend yourselves!" Falk Firebeard put up his shield and axe ahead of him before talking on an assassin, bashing him to the ground, then planting the axe into his skull. Brina Marilis, General Tullius, Thane Bryling, and Legate Rika all carried swords and shields and started fighting back to back against their enemies. John commanded the runes and sent out waves upon waves of flaming magical binds that held on to any random assassin and dragged them away from the allies fighting back to back. John himself was exposed as he needed to focus on the spell, thus he left his personal defense to 4 frost atronachs that covered him from all directions. The death rate among the assassins was accelerating at an unanticipated speed, and their limbs littered the ground. General Tullius alone displayed incredible martial prowess as he cut down one assassin after another in a flurry of maneuvers. The man was a textbook for dirty and strategic fighting. Meanwhile, Legate Rika and Thane Bryling were slicing and dicing their opponents while covering the flanks behind General Tullius and leaving Falk Firebeard and Brina Marilis to take care of the rear. "Something is wrong with those people. They are trying to rush us with numbers," Falk Firebeard shouted. "Focus on killing and guarding the flank. If we become sloppy for a second, they'll break our defense," General Tullius replied. "Incoming!" John shouted as he felt that a new wave of enemies entered the scene. This time, it was no mindless chargers rushing in but rather a tactical strike with magical spells. Many masked mages started teleporting in through various rifts and cast lightning binds at everyone present. This spell would cause a chain of electricity to emerge and tie the target to the mage in a very unjust game of tug-of-war. The caster can just pull the target anywhere they want, and the target can only physically resist. Falk Firebeard was caught by his feet, and Brina Marilis got her sword hand disarmed. 3 mages managed to occupy General Tullius, and the rest were struggling to keep up. As for John, half of the mages present were trying to hold him still, but somehow, he corrupted their spells and caused it to blow up in their hands. You're trying to go against me with just this? John sneered before vaporizing the skin and flesh of these casters with acidic spells. And before the mages get to dominate the fight, John was already massacring them down one by one with his innovative magic. The moment any of them die, they would drop the masks on their faces and lie down motionless. The cleanup process is surely going to be messy as so many dead were put down, but John wasn't one to care for his enemies. The last of the mages was cornered by John and General Tullius. The general cleanly shaved off both of the man's legs by a sneak attack as John rammed the man's head into a wall, causing both the head and the dragon priest mask on it to shatter. Phew! John jolted his hands to shake off the blood and brain matter off it before looking to the people around. Everyone alive? Yeah, just. This is so tiring. Falk Firebeard replied. Thane Bryling. Just a flesh wound. I'll live. She replied. Good. Let's get to. John wanted to get the people out of here, but he was interrupted by Bryling. Where is Lady Sybil? She asked. John and the rest paused for a bit. I think she went back to her office before the attack, Legate Rika replied. I'll go check on her, John said before turning to General Tullius. Get those people out of here. The general felt clearly offended as John felt like he was giving him an order, but that was an emergency, and the most capable one is clearly John. He just has to wait until things settle down before he can give John an earful. John immediately moved off the throne room towards the hallway leading to Sybil's room, but there he ran into more assassins that were heading deeper inside the palace. Hey boys! John diverted their attention, and as they turned to him, they all unsheathed their blades with frenzied eyes. All right. Nice and easy, one by one. Or we can play it fair, the whole lot of you versus the whole lot of me. The first assassin ran at John. John held the man's arm, flung him against the wall, and then shattered his spine with a knee attack. The second jumped trying to stab John in the face, but John received him, rotated around the man, and planted his head to the ground to let the brain jump out as the skull exploded. The third came at John from the back, but John kicked the man with a horse kick that threw him at the fourth and the fifth. The sixth was a large man, so John launched a palm to the man's shoulder, then a punch to his nose, then a finger stab to the chest cavity, then grabbed the man through the ribs, a knee to the abdomen causing the garbled ribcage to deform up before launching a power punch to the heart area that caused the back of the man to deform against where he was hit from the front. Fatality! John advanced as he eliminated all those who came across him in close-quarter combat, since the hallway was tight and it was fun. As he reached Sybil's room, he acted like a gentleman and knocked on the door a few times. Lady Sybil, this is John Dare. I am afraid we're under attack. Will you come out, please? No response was heard from Sybil, so he knocked once again. My lady, I hope you are in decent shape. John then proceeded to open the door, but what he saw in there made him question his sanity and close the door again. I guess not. The sound of rummaging and fighting came from inside Sybil's room, this time clearer than before, and the voice of Sybil ran through his head. Help me out! Oh God! John rolled his eyes backward and opened the door again to see that two women were fighting each other with long claws and sharp fangs on a stage of blood and gore. On one hand, there was Sybil Stentor, whose clothes were all but torn and her body seemed to have undergone some hideous transformation as she stood completely naked with each limb extending a foot further from what they usually are and a skin that looked all grotesque and bloody. Her eyes were scarily focused on her enemy and her hair was messy and grisly. On the other hand, a pale hag floated by with the mask of a dragon priest covering her face, same as the assassins, but she was very light and ethereal. The problem with becoming ethereal is that if your clothes are light and you are floating, everything will be easily seen through, and John wasn't a fan of a hag's body type. Do any of you, ladies, know what is the opposite of having a boner? John said and walked in trying not to look. The hag didn't seem to appreciate John's presence, but she was occupied with Sybil at the moment. He, on the other hand, was fast to notice that in this room there were 4 Draymora churls casting a barrier around Sybil, which was isolating her inside. In her vampiric form, Sybil was trying to break the barrier from inside, but the hag would use her ethereal form to pass through the barrier, attack Sybil, then escape the barrier again. The problem with being ethereal is that one can't attack in that form, so they have to become corporeal to attack, then become ethereal again to escape. Sybil was able to attack the hag the moment the hag would attack her, but if she tried to focus on dispelling the barrier, the hag would take the opportunity and deliver a fatal blow. There where John had to come in. Using pride, he started to cast his spells at a rapid pace. Dispel. Banish. 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 And banish. In full speed, John eliminated all the bothersome enemies that were hindering Sybil except for the hag. The moment the barrier collapsed, the hag immediately looked between John and Sybil, then decided to retreat. As she is ethereal, she can just phase through the wall and run away. But, nope, not this way, John said as he put his hand on the wall, which seemed to have imbued it with his magicka, causing it to prevent the hag from escaping. The hag tried the ceiling, the floor, the other walls, and the window, but it seemed that John turned the tables on her. So in a final attempt of escaping, the hag rushed at John, attempting to either attack him or phase through. Venus! With John's call, a third naked figure appeared in the room. However, this one was breathtakingly beautiful and divine. The embodiment of lust, Venus, would take the form which would stimulate anyone's feelings. But aside from being a strong mental influence, one of the strengths Venus has is the ability to channel John's energy even with its ethereal status. In other words, Venus can attack what is ethereal as she is ethereal herself, and the punching power she delivers is like John punching someone in an incorporeal body. It was safe to say that the hag wasn't going to survive this, if not for John keeping lust from going overboard. Just from that blow, the hag was put down unconscious with her mask shattered and her face completely disfigured. Meanwhile, Sybil Stentor kept her frenzied eyes on John but gradually calmed down and returned to her normal form. With a flick of her fingers, she pulled the sheet of the broken bed nearby, and it fashioned itself into a dress that covered her middle-aged body. "It is called a reverse boner," she said, replying to John's first question. "Goodness, that sounds unhealthy." John shivered in fear. "Your boner's well-being aside. Hey! Solitude is under attack," she said with John refuting her first line. "The dragon cult won't back down now," John said. "They must have targeted you to keep information from reaching the Legion." Sybil immediately walked past John to the hallway as she saw the bodies which John left behind. "Are any of the leaders hurt?" she asked. "They are with Tullius," John replied. "Then we should get some men and defend the dock. The cult's army is coming from there." She revealed the cult's movement to him. "Useful scrying for the first time?" John asked. "Even I am surprised," she replied and lifted up one of the still-living cultists before draining his blood with her fangs. John and Sybil Stentor rushed towards the entrance of the palace, and they were greeted with a sight not seen since the Dragon Wars. Dragons in the sky. Fires eating the buildings. Warriors on the roofs shooting arrows. And the dragon cult's fanatics are killing their way into the peaceful city. Welp, one Dragonborn coming right up. Chapter 640 Crisis in Solitude 3. I have noticed that the comment and vote rate has dropped to a new low despite the fanfiction's all-time popularity as the second most followed book. Despite the effort, I hope you guys consider more voting even though I can't push more chapters as in the past. Some motivation may be just what I need. The dragons attacked Solitude for the first time and in a very organized manner compared to what John ever expected. "Didn't you say the attack would come from the dock?" John asked Sybil. "This is just the beginning. They have a small army down there," she replied. "Fuck. I'll secure the spiral stairs. The Dragonborn will be here shortly," John said and charged into the city. The guards could hold half of the city to the area where the market was, but it seemed that the cultists had rigged the place with magical traps and explosive. John hunted a few cultists on the way, so when he reached the market square, he was anticipated by the cultists holding the line of fire over there. Thane Bryling. John met with Thane Bryling, who was leading the defense over that area. "Can you deal with that magic?" she asked. "I can. But you need to leave the men and evacuate the people to the castle," John said. "The other guards can," she said as she was eager to fight. "No. It has to be you," John insisted and turned to the guard's captain, "Aldous, make sure to keep up." "Yes, Thane John." John immediately headed out of cover with a big ward being cast by his left hand that withstood all the magical attacks shot at him. With his right, he fried at the cultists with bolts of fire and lightning that devastated their lines. Behind him, the guards rushed out and cleaned up the remaining resistance. John led the rush towards the city gate until he ran into the Imperial guards holding the walls. "General Tullius," John called. "Thane John, you better tell me the Dragonborn is here," the general shouted back. "The Dragonborn comes in a minute or so." "Good. Those dragons aren't attacking anyone on the ground but those on the walls, they snatch them easily. We need to hold on to the skirmish against the cultists down there, or else the wall may be breached. Just get your men from the nearby posts here and hold the gates," John said. "Also, Sybil said that the main cult's force is landing by the dockyard. I think it is already under their control. This is a goddamn siege. We're barely able to hold the gate." The general turned furious. "I'll hold the spiral stairs leading to the dock, and will try to bring some of my people to the situation here," John said. "Godspeed, Thane John," General Tullius replied. "The political rivals from a minute ago are now holding the line together against a mutual enemy. John's plan may have diverged too far from its original course with the dragon cult involving itself, but this situation solves many more problems all at the same time. He was always worried about why the dragons were laying low after the last open clash with the dragon cult, but it seemed that they were focusing their attention on reigniting the war. Somehow, and despite all, it is a relief they were doing just that. Either way, John had to focus on the siege battle and make sure things wouldn't get messed up. For that, he needed his chief strategist to be present in this place. He immediately found a quiet place and took out an enchanted light tablet from his storage cube. By using some of the spells stored on it, he managed to contact Alina. Back in Winterhold's Sarthal, Alina was watching the city through the clear glass from the top of the Dare Tower as she submerged herself lazily in a hot tub. She had a wine glass in her hand and was moaning slowly and breathing heavily as she touched her bare and bountiful chest. She sensed John's signal and immediately projected it on the glass window with her staff. "Hey, babe." John. "Hey, Alina. What are you doing in there? It looks sexy." "Just relaxing while you are away, babe." "Aw. If the city here wasn't on fire, I would have thought this is me feeling horny." "Well, you do you, hubby. I miss you so dearly, you know." "I miss you so very much, babe. It is just the situation here in Solitude is, sheesh. I would really use your help right now." "Okay. What's wrong with that burning house, by the way? Wait, is that a fight?" she asked as she looked closely at the glass. "Ah." John looked away for a second, then sent Pride to kill the cultists and extinguish the fire before looking back. "Solved. Looks like you don't need my help." Alina smiled as she kept sipping her wine. "Solitude's under siege," John said. "What?" The one who said that just now was not Alina but someone who jumped out of the bathtub with a face that was probably submerged between Alina's thighs. "Rude girl. Get back down there." Alina was immediately triggered at that girl and held her from her hair. "Oh hey. How are you fitting in the tower, Vittoria?" John greeted the latest resident in his house, Vittoria Vici. I am fine. Vittoria got her hair free from Alina's hands. Just what is happening in Solitude? The Stormcloaks are attacking? Nope. The dragon cult is. It seems your bloody wedding attracted all sorts of weirdos, John replied. So, how is the situation? Alina managed to get a grip on Vittoria's nape and dragged her back next to her. The two naked and beautiful women formed an image of extreme seduction, which John resisted with a deep breath. The cult attacked with assassin and disturbed the surveillance of Sybil Stentor. After that, 3 dragons appeared and alongside the cultists, they started terrorizing the city with chaotic attacks to diverge the attention of the defenders as their main war band enters from the dock's spiral stairs. John said. All right. Alina thought for a second. Get the people to safety. Working on it. Don't let them all gather in one place. Use the castle, the temple, the palace, and the taverns as refugee centers. The dragons are too proud to attack separate targets of small groups for too long. If you gather all the people in one place, they will get annihilated. Shit. Gotta hurry then. What you need to worry about is the secret phase of their plan. They made both their attack forces obvious. They should be doing something more sinister if they're acting so brazenly. In any case, no army can fully take control of Solitude before the Imperial Legion retreating through the Dragonbridge front and destroying them. So, use a variable they didn't account for, throw a wrench in their plans, crush their illusions and make their true intentions come to the surface. Can you hunt the cult's warband by yourself? If I attack them, they'll run everywhere and it will be tiresome. Also, the dragons would notice me. I need the Dare Corps on this one, John said. They are a few hundred miles away. Make your own Dare Corps, Alina said. I can't just wait? Necromancy? Inside a city during a defense battle? John said as his voice went down. What? You don't dare? Alina asked with a smirk on her face. Woman, John stopped smiling, you're really looking forward to that analysis experience, aren't you? Hard pass. Alina crossed her hands. Damn right, it's hard. John sneered, but an idea clouded his judgment. Can I just forget about Solitude and come home? You two look so damn peachy. Calm down, big boy. Alina replied seductively, don't forget what's at stake here. Blue balls. Blue Skyrim. Alina said, if the dragon cult is reigniting the civil war by weakening one side, they are surely strengthening the other side. Tisk. I'll send some people to investigate the Stormcloak army. I will see if I can teleport to Solitude with a force as well. Alina said and held Vittoria from her hair, directing her down, meanwhile, sit tight and survive the blue balls. You're being ruthless. And you love me for it. Goddamn, I do. By John. Vittoria waving. By Vittoria. John waving. John hung up the spell and put the tablet away. Sighing in his heart, he cracked all his joints and headed towards the spiral stairs leading down to the dock. Long night ahead. If not for the efforts of the Legion Guards and the EEC agents holding up in the East Empire storehouse under Solitude, the plan of the dragon cult wouldn't have been delayed like this. The leader of the attack, Bites on Bones, the Argonian dragon cultist who venerates the great dragon Lotsovengean, stood in awe as he witnessed Solitude for the first time. A city standing on a lying stone, isn't this just poetic? Long ago, he witnessed the fall of the city of Vivec when the floating meteorite shattered it to oblivion. There was also that floating city of Umbriel that terrorized the world a few decades ago. Marvels just don't end in this world, and Solitude is going to join those two marvels very soon. But they had to breach that warehouse first in order for such a dream to come true. Lord Nalot passed on the will of the great dragons to me. Tonight and before tomorrow's sun rises, the great cult shall offer Lord Alduin a city in ruin. Attack. the Argonian shouted as he watched the cult's fanatics put their hearts into ramming down the gate of the warehouse. Of course, this wasn't just the followers of the secret dragon horde. These warmonger fanatics were the followers of the war dragon horde and their dragon lord, Kungisvern. A couple of years ago, these fanatics clashed with a famous Nord warlord known as John Dare, who killed their king and annihilated their forces. They were chased off their ancestral land and forced on the top of the mountains near Orsinium. If not for the dragon that found them last year, these men wouldn't have made it back to Skyrim. The dragon cult was built on the shoulders of many former Forsworn, orcs, pirates, and many ruined clans. That's what gathered this mighty warband here under Solitude. Commander bites on bones. A large werewolf is attacking our men. A cultist scout came towards Bites on Bones, crying out loud. A werewolf? Where? On the side entrance to the city. The side entrance to the city, also known as the spiral stairs, the ones that lead up into the Market of Solitude. It is mainly used for resupply under a strict Imperial watch, but a cultist unit attacked it in order to secure entry to the city to loot and pillage the city once they are done with their main objective in the warehouse. This unit is different from the one that is keeping the guards busy at the main city gate. Take 100 men and slay that monster, the Argonian commander said angrily. The moment he finished his words, his eyes followed the trail of a man flying in the sky. The man was a brute and seemed like a very strong warrior, but something was wrong with him. Men don't usually fly, but when they do, they aren't that good at landing. That man descended in the middle of the crowd with a terrifying sound indicating that his fall wasn't peaceful. Commander, that's Ivan. The scout recognized the man who fell. All those who were pushing against the warehouse saw the man that fell and looked in his direction. He obviously fell amongst them and crushed 5 combatants under him, but as he was seen, those dead under him looked pretty much better than him. He was literally torn from guts to the bone in a horrific manner, then seemed as if it was fused together back, as if the tissues were mutating. Then, Roher. A deep roar of a beast that felt like carrying the stench of thousands of graves. The cultists looked up and saw a werewolf that has no fur or skin but rather an abomination of walking flesh into the shape of a werewolf. Its roar made both the living and the dead shiver, and the dead cultists and guards started to be filled with necromantic power. But what was more terrifying was the shadowy wolves that gathered around the werewolf. Though few in number, they were the thing of nightmares. The werewolf tore out a man's head with its mouth, and some of its flesh seeped into the headless corpse. They were all thinking about what kind of goddamn horror Oblivion would just decide to release on them, but no one knew that Oblivion doesn't have that much creativity with its spawns. That was John wearing Gluttony, Wrath using its undead authority, and Nefertiti summoning Shadow Atronax to add numbers. It was a small makeshift defense force, but was enough to buy time. Until the dragon cult is put off its momentum, John has just something in store for them all. Chapter 641 Crisis in Solitude 4. By the next day, most of Skyrim's holds got wind of what happened in Solitude last night. Jarl Ulfric Stormcloak saw his chance and prepared his men. Jarl Balgruuf the Greater knew that there was no leeway out of this coming battle, but only Jarl Idgrod Ravencrone was the one to take a wise action and send a war band of Nord youth as a relief force to Solitude. Last night was when death played its orchestra over the unfortunate city. The official story was that the dragon cult attacked Solitude, but no one wanted to believe that quite easily. Everyone and their mothers just decided to take the rumors in a different direction by their imagination powers. Some say that after the death of the former queen, the true queen of Solitude returned, the one whose sigil is the wolf that adorned the city of centuries, Queen Potima Septim. Others say that the ghost of Queen Potima was the one to make an entrance that night in Solitude in the shape of a decaying wolf person and to raise the dead in battle. Others said that the powerful ghost of the Wolf Queen appeared in the final battle and helped the defenders. Others say it is a conspiracy by some powerful wizard to trick the world and make the dragon cult fear attacking Solitude, but no one listens to those conspiracy theory people anyway. Still, what happened in Solitude yesterday was far from any rumor or conspiracy theory. It was a bloody battle of heroes and villains. The hearts beat like drums as the werewolf stood tall within dozens of arrows and spears sticking out from every direction of its body. The undead ran out a long time ago and the shadow wolves stopped rising. The battle was tiresome and the enemies were almost endless. All right, that's it for tonight. John was done fighting and needed some rest, so he ordered Nefertiti to create a screen of darkness around him as he retreated towards the EEC warehouse. He did so stealthily and to enter it without opening the door. He teleported inside by sensing a space where he can fit in. The place inside is filled with the people and the guards who fortified it. They seem to have blocked the gate with a wall of crates to prevent the cultists from breaking in. They also had supplies and blankets but had too many injured people. This made John quietly fork out some of his potions and leave them in a crate they can easily discover. He didn't reveal himself the whole time he was in there so that he can look for whatever the cult was after quietly. After casting a dozen detection spells, John discovered nothing of value to the cult. It was just some mundane imports and exports and cheap magic items. Weird, he exclaimed, there isn't even any secret doorway or passage. The fuck they are after? He may have delayed their plans for an hour, but the cultists seemed persistent to get it. In order to prevent that, John cast a large protection rune on the warehouse gate and teleported out. There is something he doesn't know and it is bothering him to no end. He tried to think left and right as he watched the cult's action from afar and still figured nothing out. The problem here is that he can't interrogate the cultists. The assassin ones who are wearing dragon priest masks are almost brain-dead. No matter how many times he tries to torture them or interrogate them, they just seem to feel no pain. On the other hand, the warrior fanatics of the cult would rather die than utter a word to him. They can go as far as biting their own tongues if John was ever to capture them. John needed to take a breather and give this situation a thought. I don't get it. Alina said they have a hidden agenda. The dragon cult needs to kill more Nords to send their souls to Sovngarde and feed Alduin. That's how things should be. If the cult wants to kill as many Nords in Solitude as much as possible, then how do I kill as many people as possible in Solitude? John had to stop thinking at this moment. It wasn't because he was interrupted but because he had come to an idea and quite frankly, it terrified him. This is not just going to kill everyone in Solitude. This may kill every living thing in Hafingar and the surrounding holds. Fuck foo fuck. John could stand still no more and immediately teleported himself somewhere above Solitude. Shit. This can't be happening. Please tell me it is not happening. Just don't. As there were dragons in the sky, John flew off completely undetected and headed far and deep towards the Blue Palace. He then took a nosedive down the city and off its rock to the other bank of the Karth River. Not here. Not here. He looked left and right looking for a sign, but there was nothing. He almost felt at ease as his worst fear seemed to be off point, but as he flew under the city and above the river from the thinnest point of the rock carrying Solitude, he found the thing he feared. Solitude is a city built on a high arc-like rock where the Karth River passes beneath to the Sea of Ghosts. The city always has that daring feeling to it since it was built so high on such a risky place which earned it its name, Solitude. A city on such a magnificent rock. But this daring idea is the thing that gave the dragon cult the sinister plan of taking down an entire city. And by taking it down, it meant literally bringing the city down. Many magic scripts covered the bottom of the rock that carried the city, and just from its appearance, John figured out it was meant to shatter the rocks. Dispel. John immediately aimed his staff and started taking down the runes. He noticed that many soul gems were installed between the rocks to give power to the spells, so he started aiming for th. But he felt the world around him move against his will at an incredible speed. Before he knew it, he was inside the mouth of a dragon that snuck up on him and attacked out of nowhere. Arg! The dragon pressed with its fangs against John's chest, causing him excruciating pain, but he gathered his strength in his left arm, summoned his staff, and aimed it at the dragon's snot. Highly concentrated fart explosion. A spell used by the students of the College of Winterhold to prank each other. Not in any time or space would one use it against a dragon of all the mighty beings in the world, but it was so effective that John was not only released away but tossed as far as the dragon could swing his neck. Zorkbon Mun! The dragon couldn't help but curse the human, calling him hateful. While John was released and fell towards the river mouth, he immediately activated a teleport spell and returned back again under Solitude to dispel the remainder of the spells. The dragon wasn't really willing to give up either and return towards John, but rather than coming quietly like before, he came with a flaming breath, seeking to cook the human before devouring him. The dragon closed on John at an incredible speed. The fire devoured the floating human and consumed him in no time before the dragon's maw came in and swallowed the charred man. But, Zorkbon! The dragon shouted from rage, as it seemed that he was fooled by another trick where John left the fart spell inside an illusion. Fool you once, shame on me. Fool you twice, shame on you. John seemed to have been hiding all the way up and used this chance to attack the dragon from the back. But just a second ago, he left Greed and Nefertiti in charge of dealing with the soul gems and the exploding runes, as he had to deal with a dragon. The dragon that John was facing was a green dragon with yellow serpentine eyes. Somehow, it felt venomous and savage. Stink dragon. John pointed at the dragon that landed on a large boulder in the middle of the river before starting to write it down on his note. What? The dragon wasn't sure what he heard. Well, a nasty dragon such as yourself is definitely a stink dragon. The smell gives it away. John mocked. Jor. Hi-lo stylin'. The dragon said one of the generic dragon lines, telling the mortal that he's done for. Here it comes. John put each hand on the opposite shoulder and, with a straight posture, he jumped down towards the river and took a dive in the water. The dragon which chased John in the sky descended towards the water, but seemed to be aware that John is preparing a trap. The water is not that cold, you know. However, he could still hear John's voice provoking him somehow, but even when he tried to ignore it, John found the dragon's trigger right away. Pussy! In a fit of rage, the dragon took a dive after John, and the river became quiet for a full minute before. Splash! The dragon got out of the river and tried to spread his wings to fly up, but his tail seemed stuck, and he failed to make flight before getting pulled back into the river again. 10 seconds passed before the dragon made a more violent second attempt to leave the river, but it wasn't any more successful than the one before. After that, the river started to stir and swirl violently as many echoes came from its bed and tremors started to be felt in the ground. A few moments passed this way, and many members of the dragon cult that were laying siege to the city came to check on the dragon who was fighting an enemy. After a minute, a golden bright light came from the river bed and the noises died down. As the night was cold and the river was half frozen, no one dared to investigate any deeper into the river and waited for it all to be concluded. And just like that, a man came from the river walking to its bank with his aura covering him like flames and drying all the water on him, which caused steam to rise. On the man's arms was another man who was carried like a princess, and many were familiar with him as the red-haired maniac, John Dare. Oh, Dragonborn! I owe you yet again. The Dragonborn put John Dare, who seemed to have been in a predicament, on the ground. No worries, Brother John. There's nothing such as debts between us. the Dragonborn replied. The two men looked at each other with sparkly and warm eyes which caused all those seeing them to shudder in and out. Meanwhile, the two men had a different conversation as they grit their teeth. "Mirren, you bastard. Stop making me look bad," John said as he was covering his mouth by fixing his Dragonborn helm. "You teleported me in a frozen river, you bastard. You think I'll leave your fucking image be?" Mirren replied as he was disguising as John. "If Wolfer was available, he wouldn't have complained like you. You think I care? You Nords are animals in this cold. People can actually die freezing, you know." "Bah. Bunch of milk drinkers." John decided to quit squabbling with Mirren and passed him a sword. "I don't know why, but I can't seem to summon anyone from Winterhold here in Solitude. The dragons must have made a disturbance to isolate the two cities from linking to each other through teleportation," John said. "And I am the only bastard who was out of town." Mirren received the sword from John. "Don't act angry, our gay scene is always worth it. Fuck you. Deal with the cultists for me, I'll send Wrath as reinforcements," John said as he flew up to the city once again. "Giving me an army of fanatics to deal with? You're a cold-hearted bitch." Mirren cussed at John but saw many cultists coming his way. "John Dare, today you die?" An orc came towards him with a blade made of some weird materials. "Don't guys like you ever learn?" John Dare is practically the name of the Grand Champion of Cyrodiil, which makes him the strongest fighter in Tamriel by default. "He's a mass murderer, you know," Mirren asked. "Die." The orc rushed Mirren with frightening momentum, but who is Mirren if not a world-class arcane trickster? Mirren deflected the blade and threw the orc off balance before aiming his finger against his opponent's forehead and flicking it with a lightning spell. "Thunder Cookie." "No." John uses his whole fist. Mirren contemplated. Whether it was a thunder cookie or a thunder flick, the orc had a hole in his head where there was supposed to be none and died on the spot, while having his brain getting fried from inside. "No." Seeing that, the Argonian who was leading the siege on the dockyard, Bites on Bones, couldn't help but feel vexed that such a strong warrior fell like nothing against the infamous John Dare. Even if they can overwhelm him with numbers, John Dare is known as one of the strongest in Tamriel. "Distract him. We need to activate the runes," the Argonian said to his second in command. "But we still haven't added the last part of the runes under the city directly," the second in command replied. "There is no time, and the only way to get there is the warehouse. This will do enough damage." The Argonian didn't take no for an answer and instructed his men, "Tell the warmongers to go for the kill, and us followers of the great secret dragon horde shall put on our masks and wait for Lord Nollet's commands." As the battle raged on this front, 3 individuals stood to watch the pillars of smoke rise from Solitude. The followers of the great cult shall execute the plan prematurely. It seems that the Dragonborn appeared too early. A man wearing a great robe and a pale dragon priest mask spoke. "Well, we have done our part of the deal and smuggled your people into Solitude in my caravan, but you promised us that your dragons will kill John Dare." Beside him, a woman spoke with all the hate and malice in the world. "Silence, woman. You and your wizard promised us that you would keep an eye on the Dragonborn. Due to that incompetence, one of the dragon lords has perished under the river. We had a deal. Tell your dragons." "Disrespectful!" The dragon priest shouted at the woman, and his voice carried a very strong and mysterious power similar to that of the dragons as he aimed his staff towards her. Maven Blackbriar and the archwizard with her, the one called Messenger, felt the immense power coming from the dragon priest. However, Messenger was his match as he held out his right hand and stopped the staff of the dragon priest. Surprisingly, it was an arm made of dwarven metal that is very durable against magic, a prosthetic arm. "My friend, Nawat, was it?" Messenger spoke slyly. "I mean no disrespect of course, but our deal was to keep the people of Winterhold from teleporting here. Whether the Dragonborn was in Winterhold or not is something that you people assumed on your own accord. You're questioning the ability of the secret dragon horde? The dragon priest, Nalat, didn't seem to be a very open-minded character and reacted with anger. Not at all. I wouldn't have provided you with those scrolls if I didn't. Messner said. You provided them with scrolls? Maven asked as this was news to her. What scrolls? Oh, Lady Maven. I forgot to mention. Messner smiled. I just provided them with minor magic scrolls for combat use. Nothing but a small tip in the spirit of our alliance. That and with the funds I provided to your cult, I expect success. Maven added. Nalulet looked between the two poisonous people, but deeper towards Messner, who seemed as powerful as he is, if not more. The Dragonborn, John Dare, and all those who show hostility towards the great dragon cult shall witness an unforgettable night, no matter what tricks the unbelievers may use. Nalat said, just wait and see. The unholy allied trinity of Maven, Messner, and Nalat watched the situation unfold as they held their powers for the big moment. Bringing down a city is surely some big business, but Nalat and Mycenar had two different plans in mind. The night was just beginning and the dragons danced in the sky. Chapter 642 Crisis in Solitude 5. The Dragonborn was a serious threat to all dragons. Even without the support of John Dare, he proved to be very powerful. The moment he joined the battle on Solitude, he displayed nothing but pure martial prowess. First, he used a bow and chased off a dragon that was attacking the Bard's College. He then kept hunting the remaining cultists in the city to wipe them off completely in less than 3 minutes. Stealth archer build. Still too OP. Without hesitation, the Dragonborn moved to the front gate of Solitude and joined the skirmish from the top of the walls. The dragon cult forces seemed to have taken control of the passage to the city gate from outside and were volleying their arrows into the city, which locked the Imperial Legion's movement and made them focus on the cultists outside. Eventually, John used archery instead of directly casting magic to devastate the cultists on that front. He would print a rune on every arrow he held before letting it loose to explode and kill half a dozen cultists with every shot. The last that was seen from the dragon cult was them running back to the mountains. Even the two dragons retreated to the high peaks to the west, but their roars were still echoing in the skies. The defenders couldn't even cheer or celebrate the retreat of the cultists, as the result was clear. The losses suffered among the Legion soldiers, the guards, and the civilians were already over 2,000 dead and 5,000 more injured. The remaining soldiers who were in an able fighting condition were around 3,000 and the civilian refugees were innumerable. On top of that, the sound of the dragons roaring over the mountains meant that they are still nearby and they are merely regrouping. Reporting. A Legion soldier came running towards General Tullius. Lord John Dare is still fighting the cultists beneath the city, sir. He is greatly outnumbered. Take 400 men and rush to his aid with Legate Rika. The general replied. No need. It was then when the main character of the scene appeared, John himself, or rather John who is disgusted as the Dragonborn. Excuse me? The general turned to the Dragonborn with a frown. He is retreating to the city right now. The Dragonborn replied. All right. The general nodded. I must thank you greatly, Dragonborn. We are in your debt, but we're not out of the woods yet. These monsters are bound to come again, we need to reorganize. How far is the main legion? The Dragonborn asked. Less than 6 hours, Legate Rika replied. The Dare fleet will arrive in 6 hours, the Dragonborn said. The sun is already rising. This will be at the time of noon when they get here. General Tullius estimated. General Tullius? At that time, a man came in from the sky. Thane John. The general replied as he saw the levitating magician land, but he ignored the levitation part even though it was a felony. That John was of course Mirren, who disguised himself as the actual John using lust. I can't open portals to Winterhold from here, so the Dragonborn is all I could bring, John Mirren said. He is enough so far, the general replied. However, there's an urgent matter we need to discuss first, the Dragonborn said and looked at John Mirren. We discovered that the dragon cult has lined up many runes and soul gems under the rock which Solitude stands on. John Mirren continues. We believe its purpose is to cause fractures in the city's foundation and, the Dragonborn continued, but General Tullius interrupted. I'll stop you right there, the general said. Truth be told, when I was assigned to Solitude for the first time, I was fearful of a city hanging on a rock myself. I couldn't bring myself to live in such a place, but when I looked at the historical records of the Legion, Solitude was described as unshakable even against catapults and magic. The general clarified. Well, that's better than we thought. John Mirren was taken aback. The Dragonborn thought for a second before looking around, but what if the rock was fractured enough for something big to hit it? Both General Tullius and John Mirren looked at John with strange eyes. Something as big as a city? The general asked. Well, the dragons are cunning and won't take such a step without a reason. The Dragonborn said. They added some under the city, and some under the Blue Palace. Still, they wanted to break into the East Empire Company storehouse and plant their spells on it too. Maybe multiple dragons, no? Legate Rika said, but the three men looked at her and dismissed the idea. This is not misogyny or anything because you suggested it. I respect women in uniform and all, but that's not what a dragon would do. John Mirren replied awkwardly. Totally. Not at all. The Dragonborn joined the awkwardness. Bro, this is the scene where the woman turns out to be right and we men start looking like bigots cause we doubted her. John Mirren took the Dragonborn aside. Bro, this is you and me in the same scene. We're extra liberals. It won't go that far. The Dragonborn said. But bro, think about it. Women are always right on Netflix. John Mirren said. I know I shouldn't have let you see that, the Dragonborn said. But still, if the dragons wanted to do something themselves, their shouts would have been enough. Why resort to normal magical means? Legate Rika asked. Is it me or is this woman too smart for us? John Mirren asked. Shush, bro, enough misogyny. The Dragonborn said, then looked at Legate Rika. I think you are right. The cult is either planning this on their own as they aren't planning to involve the dragons, or a third party is joining the fight. Legate Rika flicked her fingers. The four people present on the wall looked at each other with concerned faces. All right. Lord John should make sure to remove those exploding runes and analyze them, the Dragonborn suggested. John Mirren seemed distracted for a second before realizing that the actual John was talking to him. Oh yes, I'll do that. Archwizard John Dare to the rescue as always. John Mirren took his leave and left the wall, flying fast into the city. All right, I will go and take a look at. As the Dragonborn was about to say something, he heard Nefertiti's voice in his head. Homan, the magic is starting. Shit. John couldn't maintain his cool and looked towards Mirren, who was halfway through the city, before shouting, Wait! Mirren heard John and stopped immediately, but he felt the land shiver under his feet. John immediately jumped off the wall to the nearest roof and prepared a blink spell midway to reach Mirren. Rumble. Everyone in the city started to feel the shock, as if an earthquake was occurring, and their panic reached a new level. Meanwhile, John reached Mirren and the two of them put their power together to reinforce and cast an alteration spell on everything around them to keep it intact. Some buildings may fall, Mirren said. Hold on tight. Try to take the shock away. John shouted. Easy for you to say. Mirren held on to the spell as much as he could and tried to absorb all the tremors he could, but he failed midway and his spell broke. Arg! Asterisk rumble. Star. Hold on. John tried the best he could as well and channeled as many tremors as he could with his staff, but the output of the explosions exceeded the input John could dish out, and he was blown away as well. From there, the chain reaction of the runes laid around the Rock of Solitude started to hasten up the process, and the real scale of the spell was shown. John may have not discovered it before, but these runes were even laid down on some parts of the city. Who the fuck cast such a spell? Mirren roared in anger. Someone powerful. An arch-wizard. John replied with his head running out of solutions for this situation. John, look. But Mirren looked somewhere where John wasn't looking. What the F? John barely turned his head and his brain went completely blank. Not far from him was the famous Windmill of Solitude, the tower that stands as high as Castle Dower and is accessible to it through an arch bridge. Under that windmill is the spiral stairway leading to the dock. On that windmill, white fractures of arcane energy started to run through its walls all the way up. Crack crush. The fractures started to widen and the great Windmill of Solitude staggered, lost parts of its outer wall, then lost an entire section as it was blown to smithereens, before systematically falling outside the city, down towards the docks. John felt a shadow coming from above, and as he looked up, the bridge that was connecting the castle and the windmill was falling towards his head. Not this again. John raised his staff up as a traumatic memory came to mind, and with no restraints, he opened a portal so huge that it swallowed most of the bridge's debris and then reopened again at the middle of the sea far to the north. But most of the debris isn't all of it, since the portal he made wasn't big enough even though he moved it to swipe all the large chunks of the bridge. Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. On the other hand, Mirren kept firing as many spells as possible to destroy all the remaining debris before they hit the buildings down below. Finally, the rumbling and devastating sound of the windmill crushing down the city was heard, and the screams of the people got louder as their hearts sank from terror, and a cloud of dust covered this section of the city. Mirren? John called. Yes, Mirren replied. Switch roles. You're Dragonborn, I am me again. Using the cover of the dust cloud, John held Mirren's shoulders and the two of them switched appearances. He then clicked the ground with his staff, and all the dust was dispersed. Many debris hit the city, but not all buildings were affected, and the casualties were minimal since these buildings were emptied. But there is now no windmill over Solitude, and a collapsing section of the castle was still threatening what's under it. I didn't know they had rigged the windmill, Mirren said. Me neither. I couldn't detect it at all. John replied with an ashen face. He hurried up to where the windmill once stood and climbed the rubble to see beyond the city. Oh God, no. And that was his reaction. His words caused Mirren to hurry up to him and look down to see that most of Solitude's dockyard that was right beneath the windmill when it fell, and it became no more. The Legion soldiers, the guards, Captain Aldous, Legate Rika, Thane Bryling, and General Tullius all rallied from around the city to the collapsed site, only to see that the ancient windmill is now gone, and both John Dare and the Dragonborn are standing over there looking down. The soldiers who were at the scene first cleared the road to General Tullius and Thane Bryling, who walked on top of the rubble to see. What in oblivion has happened here? Bryling asked. Look for yourselves. John pointed at the collapsed windmill and the devastated dockyard. The sun rose and shed its light on Solitude, but no one could shake off the coldness of the scenery down at the river when all turned to ruin. They destroyed the dock, and half of the river is now blocked. Legate Rika spoke in worried eyes. The Legion's supplies may be solved through other ways, but the city's economy will be. She shied off saying the last word. Devastated. That's the word on everyone's mind. Solitude is a coastal stronghold rather than a city on a main traveling road. Most of the travelers come here via ship, and rarely by traveling through the harsh mountain roads. They weren't planning on dropping down the city, John. The Dragonborn, Mirren said, they were planning on dropping down the economy of the city. Initially, the explosive runes were meant to destroy chunks of the Rock of Solitude in order to make it impossible to pass through the river. John blamed himself for not figuring that part out when the cultists were attacking the East Empire Trading Company's storehouse. He assumed that they wanted to destroy the city's foundation, which the storehouse is under, but it seemed that his mind had wandered too far. "But we can still rebuild it easily," the general said. "The Fey half of the river is still intact. We can rebuild a temporary pier and put a floating bridge to this side." Legate Rika continued for him. This was true, but with the current state of things, the reconstruction effort will take at least half a month, which the Stormcloak may use to sweep off the lands before Solitude can be prepared again. Both the general and the legate seemed to be trying to cheer themselves, but a dragon's roar made their hearts sink. A shadow of a dragon passed above all of them as one of the enormous beasts took to the skies and looked down at them. "Motatus zei jor. Zuyu los hin don. Tremble before me, mortals. I am your doom." The dragon's tongue shook the skies as it took a curve in its flight and flew down towards the city at a terrifying speed. "It is going to ram the city," the general shouted. "It wants to block the open part of the river." "With me!" John held the Dragonborn, Mirren, and ran on the city's edge before jumping off the wall together to intercept the dragon before it arrived. "You mad?" "Sure." The two young men stopped midair. Mirren tried to aim for the eyes of the dragon, while John prepared for a big spell. This is called. A large quantity of arcane energy wrapped itself around John's staff as the dragon approached with all its momentum like an unstoppable train and "Wywell Tur Shul. Faz Ausag. Roar. Crash." All sorts of loud chaos happened in an instant. Two shouts, a powerful spell, a dragon's roar, and a crash. The dragon was lying in the river and squirming as if it was possessed by something. Its fire breath shout was blocked by John's spell, and both John Dare and the Dragonborn were floating up again. The people had to run to the other side of the city to see this scene, as the dragon was just screaming rather than roaring by this point. The shout Faz Ausag meant pain, suffer, burn, a spell of pure malice discovered and recreated by John from an ancient record. The dragon was being occupied by the torture shout since John knew it would be impossible to immobilize the dragon by any other means. "Mortal! I'll get you for this." John wanted to hurry and slay that dragon before the shout's effect ended, but another shout echoed. "Would na kst." Another dragon appeared at a frightening speed, and before anyone could react, he lashed his tail at John and Mirren, sending them off at an unimaginable speed. The dragon didn't stop there, and immediately rushed towards the Rock of Solitude to wreak havoc and block the rest of the river. "Shit! Get the battle mages here!" General Tullius shouted. "Archers! Battle stations!" Thane Bryling led the guards. The second round was over. Now, the sun was rising to the sky and the third and final round had begun. Chapter 643 Crisis in Solitude 6. Humanity is a mysterious thing. In many stories where a non-human is a bad guy, they are always attempting to harm humanity because they are judging them in some way while overlooking every other aspect. That is being one-dimensional and short-sighted. And so when the bad guys are at the doorstep with armies of White Walkers, ships of alien invaders, vessels of stormtroopers, or whatever branded as the face of evil in any story, humanity has a way to unite against that threat and face it together. In our case, it is the Grey Wolf movement that supports Thane Bryling and the Imperial Legion, which supports Thane Brina Marilis. Facing a single defined enemy they saw as a threat, the archers and the wizards of both sides went out with all their power to kill or be killed. Of course they would prefer aiming these weapons and spells at one another when the invading dragons go away, and that's what humanity is. They look for what is different among them and show resentment to it until they get rid of it, Then they look deeper and discriminate among themselves again. Man or elf, Nord or Imperial, white or black, old holds or new holds, they are just so good at finding differences to squabble about. But they would surprise you when they unite. The defenders beating the dragons that tried to scorch their city with fire, who would have imagined that? And when the cries of the savage dragon cultists were heard outside the gates as they charged in when a third dragon broke it open, the people of Solitude swarmed from every nook and cranny, holding everything from swords and spears to brooms and candlesticks. Even the women and children threw rocks and boiled cooking oil from above the buildings at the vile madmen. 3 dragons took to the sky and the city was fighting without breaking. No Dragonborn or John Dare was protecting them, they were doing fine on their own. But the heroes of this event can't be off stage for too long. Previously, John and Mirren, who were disguised as the Dragonborn, were attacked by a rushing dragon and got hit by his tail to instantly fly like tennis balls. Mid their flight, John managed to get hold of Mirren, and right before they hit the ground, John opened a portal and evaded the crash. The portal opened in the sky way above Solitude where the dragons weren't focusing. John and Mirren saw the situation and nodded to each other. Their clothes flattered as they controlled their fall with their magic and headed down with their weapons in hand. Down there, a dragon arched back his neck as he stopped mid-flight, and its mouth was radiating with raging flames that were ready to consume the Nord defenders who were cornered in the market. The Dragonborn, Mirren, was the first to arrive, and with his sword, he penetrated the wings of the dragon and used the force of his fall to cut open the wing vertically. The dragon roared with his flames up to the sky as the pain was torturous to him. Yet in the reflection of his eyes was the knee of John Dare, who attacked the dragon's face with the force of his fall as well. The dragon breath, which was aimed up to the sky, was directed by John's action to the members of the dragon cult who rushed through the open city gate from the main avenue. Overkill! John shouted with joy, but the next moment, the dragon that just broke the gate rushed towards his fallen comrade dragon with a powerful gust of wind and held him from his shoulders before carrying him up and tossing him off the city into the river away from the Dragonborn. Cunning bastard! John cursed. John held a large piece of debris and used his chaos tattoos to generate enough physical power, then launched it at the flying dragon to hit him on the head and cause him to retreat in panic. Seeing how the eyes and hair of John Dare went black, Mirren immediately ran away and put enough distance between him and John. The latter put his immense strength into his hips and jumped to the sky towards the next dragon, causing a strong shockwave at their clash. Dragonborn! We're being overwhelmed by the dragon cult. Thane Breiling ran into the Dragonborn, Mirren, and sought out his advice. I don't know, I'll distract the dragons or whatever. He replied, not knowing what to do, but he immediately put his hand on the helm. John, we need more manpower down here. You're fine with undead and Deidre? John asked Mirren. You're fine with undead and Deidre? Mirren asked Breiling. Of course not. But we can't be picky at the moment, she replied. She said yes, Mirren said. Wrath and Zykel are on their way, John replied. He said he's sending his special undead and Deidre, Mirren said. When? Oh, oi! A terrible scream was heard as the Bone Colossus Samurai made its entrance and rushed at the cult. That's the undead, Mirren said. Thud. Mortal! You know I hate fighting dragons. And a demonic hoarse, loud voice echoed in the sky. And that's the Deidre, Mirren said. Zykel the Daedric Titan appeared with many chains, cuffs and collars covering his body. The last John has heard from him was that he was captured by his Draemora sister and was being kept a prisoner to her sadistic torture. As Zykel received orders from John, he headed down towards the Dragonborn, Mirren. He said to assist you by distracting the dragons from the people, Zykel said. Good. That will help a lot. Breiling's face brightened up even with the presence of the terrifying Daedric monster. Nah, it will hurt a lot, Mirren said. What about the reinforcements? They should be seeing the dragons flying over the city now. What about your reinforcements? She asked. Mirren reported to John and asked about the reinforcements of Winterhold. He said they started moving and will arrive in a couple of hours, Mirren replied. From Winterhold to Solitude? That's a couple of weeks, not hours. Breiling exclaimed. We have our methods, Mirren said before turning to Zykel. It's time we go. Mirren held on to the chain coming down from Zykel's neck, and the Daedric Titan started flying between the dragons to divert their attention away. The army of the cult was rushing without fear as they had dragons on their side. The defenders fought like cornered rats and spared no effort to kill their enemies. The dragons relentlessly tried to shake off John, Mirren, Zykel, and the battle mages on the ground. All were just killing each other harmoniously. Death was looming under this beautiful morning sky, and blood painted the streets of Solitude red. Watching that sight from a far enough distance were Maven Blackbriar, Arch-Wizard Messener, and Dragon Priest Nalot. Here he is. Maven spoke. I see him, Messener nodded. And I see the Dragonborn, Nalot said. Gentlemen, I think you all know what to do. Maven turned to the two robed men beside her and backed down. Let's get this job done, shall we? Messener said and raised his prosthetic arm aiming towards John. His arm transformed into a cannon-like object and took aim towards John. Meanwhile, Dragon Priest Nalot was communicating via his Dragon Priest mask and looking back into Solitude. One of the cultists who were wearing masks stopped the raiding and fighting as his Dragon Priest mask started to glow. He then transformed into Dragon Priest Nalot. I'll kill you, Dragonborn. Back to where Maven and Messener were. Seeing the body of Nalot burn and dissolve made them feel disgusted, but it wasn't the first time they saw such a thing. Can you make it from here? Maven asked. I can. Messener replied as his magic kept overcharging to an incredible level. It took him a minute and he sacrificed many soul gems to reach the desired input before he transformed it into an output. John Dare was hanging from the horn of a flying dragon and digging his sword into the dragon's eyes as he was trying to electrify the dragon's brain from inside. It was an agonizing process, but just as he felt that it was about to succeed, the hairs of his body were all erected. It is the same feeling one gets when they are about to be hit by lightning. John could only let go of the dragon and ward himself with an incomplete spell as the attack came. The sky darkened as the blinding bolt of Magicka reached its target without even the single probability of missing. John! Thane John! Protect him! Mirren, Breiling, and Tullius all moved towards John immediately, but Mirren's way was blocked by the sudden appearance of the Dragon Priest. The Legion's mages were occupied with a dragon, and the guards were pushing back the remaining cultists. And John fell from the sky without a hint of consciousness. Zykel and Mirren tried to get as near to him as possible, but the Dragon Priest was haunting the Dragonborn, Mirren, like the plague. John crashed down on one of Solitude's most important buildings through the roof and disappeared inside. The Temple of the Divines. Right to the funeral. Messener, who stood a few miles out of Solitude, spoke with a wide grin. He's dead? Maven asked with a pale face full of disbelieving expressions. Nope. Messener shook his head. But he will. Injuries like that are impossible to recover from. Messener opened a part of his prosthetic arm and let out a large cartridge-like object to throw away and replace. So? When will he die? Maven asked. When the big monster that he conjured disappears, he will be confirmed dead. Messener replied, pointing towards Zykel. The situation was far from over in Solitude, and with the fall of John Dare, the defense became more of a hectic battle rather than just a city defense. Casualties were rising by the hundreds. Amidst all this, John Dare was in an area of town where the fight hasn't reached yet. There were a lot of people in the building he fell in, and they were all powerless citizens and refugees. The body of John Dare was lying on the ground between all the shrines of the divines with some of his limbs facing the wrong directions, but that wasn't even the most fatal part. John had the entirety of his chest blown off by the magic he was hit with. His flesh was torn and his ribcage was exposed. Beneath it were quivering lungs, a beating heart, and a lot of tissues and wounds open and bare. John himself was barely conscious but completely unresponsive. Those who screamed only did so when he fell from the roof. When he was displayed in that manner, none could even breathe or even move their eyes away, as his appearance was the stuff of horror. But what seemed unhealable or unfixable was never to stay this way, not in John's book. His ring glowed and a monster-like pile of flesh appeared. This caused the people to finally panic and back off to the front of the temple. The high priest of the divines kept holding his restoration staff with shaking hands but had no idea of what to do. The monster-like pile of flesh, or rather gluttony, started to spread itself over John's fatal injuries. Bit by bit, strength seeped back into the devastated body of John Dare. His limbs started correcting themselves, his chest was raised again, his backbone was fixed, his neck cracked, and his penis went into a full erection. Why does this keep happening? John sat up from his fall and couldn't help but be embarrassed as he cast a minor illusion to hide his boner. Don't tell my wife, okay? Lord John. High Priest. What vile magic was that? My boner. Wah! It's embarrassing when a grown-ass guy gets a boner in public, so excuse me. John wanted to hurry up and leave, but his steps halted and he looked around. Instead of going out of the temple back to the fight, he decided to go the other way deeper into the temple. Where are you going? The high priest chased after John, asking so. Gimme a sec. John held his hand up before aiming his index and middle fingers at the right temple of his head. Mirren. I'm fine. No, don't do that, just keep them busy. I need 10 minutes, yes, it's urgent. I'll send Nefertiti over with some scrolls. And watch out for that sniper, he can kill you in one shot. Keep on moving around fast. Use Zykel as a meat shield. John finished his telepathy with Mirren and looked at the high priest. Alright, where were we at? John asked. I don't know, the high priest stuttered, but John remembered what he wanted. Right, gimme your keys, John said. What, you mad? The high priest refuted immediately. Just give me the damn keys. John carried the high priest upside down and shook him well, allowing a keychain to slip along with a few bottles of wine and rum that seemed pretty fresh from the market. Help! You're assaulting a man of the gods. The high priest screamed, and the crowd around him looked at him silently. A man of the gods? John sighed. Of all the words I know, this set of words still doesn't feel right with me. Keys. Here they are. Ciao. John let go of the high priest, picked up the keys, and went further into the temple. What are you doing, you madam? The high priest screamed. The cult has let some Draugr through an old catacomb under the temple. They can break in here, so I'll deal with them. No need to thank me. John's voice came from the basement as he stormed the place without care. His head was busy. He was attacked from a few miles away by a buffed-up magic missile. The level is that of an archwizard for sure, and the archwizard he ran into the past few days was that Messner guy. Of course it can be any other unknown archwizard, such as a dragon priest or something, but even the dragons can't produce a dragon priest this fast. Maven, you keep forcing me to hasten up my plan and to think you would try to attack me during a fight with a dragon. You've become too annoying to keep alive. John held the keychain and tried to open the temple's basement before figuring out that there are more than 20 keys in the keychain. Fuck! Crush ding. He simply punched the gate open and threw the keychain away before arriving at the storage room of the temple. Just by using the simplest detection spell, he found a wall that was sealing a passage behind it and punched it down. Oel Potima, here I come. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.